Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 20th meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Public notice will be read at the start of the public portion. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Backo? Here. Mr. Bishada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio? Here. Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Sutton?
Here. Can I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second? Second. By Mr. Bishada. Would you read the resolution, please?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in such circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education, Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, negotiations for the SEA, supervisors and principals, and attorney-client privilege on permit use and security. Mr. Balca? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. The resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Backo? Yes. Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Okay, the meeting is closed. We will resume our public portion at 7:31. Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. Take notice this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed was emailed to the Home Community Star Ledger in accordance with Chapter 231, Local Law 1975. Further, in accordance with NJSA 10:40-621, a copy was posted outside the Secretary's office and also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag and please remain standing after the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, before everyone sits down, I'd like to just have a moment of silence for a couple of individuals. First of all, a few weeks ago, the district lost a loyal employee. Edward McCann was a lead custodian at our Sayreville Middle School. He loved his job. He loved what he did. He was a delight to be around. But most of all, he loved our students, and he saw the work that he did as serving our students. In addition, we also lost a very loyal fan to the Sayreville Bomber program. Ted Berardi passed away. He was the #1 fan of the Bombers, or at least self-proclaimed #1 fan of the Bombers. Truly a gentleman and truly an individual who believed in our athletes, believed in our school district, and was proud to call Sayreville home. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to have a moment of silence for the 17 students who were killed in Parkland, Florida. I have a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Backo? Here. Mr. Bishada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom? Here. Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio? Here. Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here. Ms. Hill, can you summarize what we discussed in executive, please?
Negotiations related to the SEA, supervisors and principals, and attorney-client privilege regarding permit use and security.
Okay, thank you very much. Speaking of security, we'd like to begin, if there's no objection from the board, with a discussion of school security and an opportunity to give any parents or residents who are here to either have questions or offer comments a chance to do that. Is anyone opposed to that? All right, so just by way of, first of all, some background. First of all, the Board of Education itself established probably about a year, maybe even a year and a half ago, a school security committee. So we have 3 members of our board, along with members of our administration, meeting with the borough, meeting with the fire chief, meeting with the chief of police, meeting with OEM, this is something that is an ongoing, continuing dialogue that we have started in order to ensure the safety of our students. Now, some of the outcomes that this committee has undertaken are very visible. For example, at all of our elementary schools, the campus monitors that were a new addition in September are a direct outcome of the work of that committee, their recommendation, as well as the support of this board from a financial standpoint. Other items that they have recommended may not be so visible. They may be items that we recommended internal changes in procedures in terms of how our administration, how our staff, how our police, how our fire department respond to incidents, and how we secure our schools. And those items are not made public because making them public would unfortunately give people an advantage who want to do our students harm. But you need to know that that is something that is an ongoing dialogue and ongoing actions are coming out of that. As a matter of fact, before the Florida school tragedy, we actually had a meeting scheduled for February 27th, just as part of the regular meeting schedule, and that process will continue. Certainly, we continue to look at items where there's opportunity. So many times those items are infrastructure related in terms of ensuring that our school perimeter is secure, ensuring an entry process that's responsible for admitting people into our buildings. As always, and you've heard the saying, if you see something, say something. If you happen to come to a school and you can just walk in any door, I encourage you to immediately go to the building principal's office and report that. And if you want the belt and suspenders approach, I would also encourage you to not only report it to the building principal, but also email Dr. Labby, our superintendent, so he's aware of it as well. No one should ever be able to get into one of our buildings without going through a sanctioned door, as well as having their driver's license scanned, checked in, etc. So it's part of all of our jobs to make sure that our schools are secure. Now, in response to the events in Florida, I also know that there is a national movement afoot. And one of the things that I think that's very special about this movement is that it's student-led. And if there's going to be changes that are going to occur, as I watch Meet the Press on Sunday, as I talk about this nationally with National School Board Associations, that the thing that's unique about this is the fact that the students have really taken a leadership role, and that leadership role is occurring across the nation. Now, one of the things that has been discussed is a nationwide walkout, and I've heard different dates and different individual events that are scheduled where students would walk out of school to protest, or I shouldn't say protest, to advocate for gun control and gun control reforms. The Board of Education as a whole is not in a position where we can support or condone such a protest. And I want to explain legally why we can't do that, and also from a logistical standpoint why it's problematic. First of all, there is a long-standing Supreme Court case known as the Tinker case. It's Tinker versus the Des Moines Independent School District. And Mary Beth Tinker, back in 1965, wore a black armband to protest the Vietnam War, and she was suspended from school. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that students, as well as teachers, do not shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate. But that's not all the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court also ruled that any type of protest such as that cannot cause a significant disruption to the educational process. And if a disruption to the educational process were to occur, that school districts are able to discipline the students in order to maintain order, in order to maintain a safe learning environment. So certainly 300 to 400 students walking out of any one of our schools at a given time in protest would certainly create that disruption and be a situation where the school district has the ability to discipline students for disrupting the educational process. But beyond that, even if the board were to sanction that event, the Board of Education is not in a position where legally, as a public school, we can select which particular causes we will allow our students to participate and protest in. So if we decide that we open this door to allow students to basically walk out and protest anything. So today, it may be a protest in favor of gun control. The next day, we would have to allow students who wish to walk out and protest in favor of their right to advocate for the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. The next day, we may have to allow students to walk out and protest for the legalization of marijuana. And the day after that, we may even allow students to go out and protest because they're unhappy that their chemistry teacher gave them too much homework on the Friday right before a long weekend. So once we open the door, we as a school board can't police and decide which individual causes we can support, which particular causes we want our students to advocate for or against. From a logistical standpoint, the other challenge we have is this whole debate begins around student safety. There's Facebook posts out there, there's information that's been made publicly about the time of this event, the location of this event, how long this event is going to last. The last thing that we want as a board to do is to advocate for students to leave school at a predefined time, unsupervised, in a politically charged environment and on a politically charged issue, because there is the real possibility that someone wanting to do them harm could do them harm because of the high profile around these particular events. I still believe and I still encourage students, if they feel strongly about this issue, pro or con, they still have the right and the ability to shape national debate. It just doesn't need to be a walkout during the school day. It can be a lesson in democracy where they have to go to the borough hall and learn how to apply for a permit to hold a rally at Kennedy Park on a Saturday. I'm sure if students feel strongly about this issue and congressmen receive hundreds of letters from Sayreville students about a rally that's being held, that most likely they're going to show up on a Saturday because they're going to want to be part, especially if they support the particular stance that this rally is advocating for or against. So there's an opportunity for us as adults to guide our students and make this not only a chance for reform and a chance for advocacy, but really an educational process for them so that they can grow as leaders. So often we talk about our students being the leaders of tomorrow. That automatically makes an assumption that they're not leaders today. And we as adults have a role in mentoring them and developing them so that they can be leaders today. So before I open up the public for any comments, questions, or concerns, I'm just going to turn it over to the board if any board members have any comments that they wish to share. All right, then I'll open it up to the public. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is Nancy Diaz. I live in Sunrise Terrace in Harlan. I am the person that my son approached me right here and asked me if I would help him organize the national walkout protest. And so before I even discuss that, I wanted to share with you a story about my son. My son is in 6th grade at the middle school. He, unfortunately, at the beginning of this school year, he had a really bad experience with another kid, basically stalking him at the school. This kid first harassed my son during lunch. He was constantly stepping on his shoes. He was throwing chips at him. And the boy and my son had a few exchanges, but nothing my son did or said made a difference or made the situation any better. My son came home one day and told me that the boy was following him everywhere. When my son took a long walk to a class, the boy would follow him. When he was out at recess, the boy would follow him. My son was feeling very uneasy every single day for about 2 months. One day, my son came home and told me that this boy followed him to his math class, stepped into the class, and asked the teacher, "What class is this?" After school, the boy jumped on his bus. He loudly asked the bus driver, "What bus is this?" The boy was purposely harassing my child. My son was very uncomfortable because this is not normal behavior for an 11-year-old. So after trying to work it out with Mr. Jagu, my son came home one day and said, "Mommy, this is the kid who will bring a gun to school and shoot everybody." This from the mouth of my 11-year-old. Our kids know what's happening because they see it on social media. It's in the news. They experience it every single day. They are the ones who have to go to school and feel uneasy and not feel safe when these types of things happen. As you know, students and staff have a right to teach and learn in a safe environment. This walkout is not just for kids, by the way. It is also for parents and also for school faculty if they so choose to participate. It's happening all over the country. As you know, this is not just a Sayreville thing. This is about empowering our youth, our teachers, and our school administrators to demand that a comprehensive bill be immediately brought before Congress to address gun violence that is killing our kids and killing our teachers. So to clarify, I wanted to confirm a few things with this board. First of all, with the age of the kids at the middle school, I do expect parent involvement for those parents whose kids chose to participate in the event. The parents would register online and they would be part of the protest one way or the other. I'm expecting some parents will be at the school when the protest occurs. I, for one, will be there to support my own son. I spoke to a civil rights attorney who told me that a kid's right of free speech is protected in school, and that for the very short duration of this symbolic protest, it would hardly be viewed as an imposition to the school, and that at no time is the school permitted to enforce disciplinary action against any student who wishes to exercise his right of free speech to join in the protest. This attorney also told me that unless we plan to have these kids running around wildly during the protest for the very short period of time, and while they are on school property, they should be considered safe, because let's face it, the board always conveys the message that our kids are safe on school property. So my purpose of the email to Dr. Labby and to Mr. Jagu was to set parameters. By parameters, I mean, you know, what time, where can the kids stand, and that sort of thing. It would be very nice to have the school district on board. The message here is that something has to be done, not just nationally, but on the local level. Let's face it, we don't have, you know, metal detectors or any of those things in our school district. The message to the kids should be not a message where we encourage them to shut up and sit down when we know that the issues affect them directly. And so to those parents who are against the protest, that's your right. No one is telling you that your kid has to participate. But I stand here as a concerned mother who wants to empower my kid to be vocal in his concerns. And yes, to encourage him to participate in movements he feels deeply about. My job as his mother is always to advocate for him. Changing our laws and protecting our kids and school staff is something I believe is worth fighting for. I'm asking, you've already said your position, and I just wanted to set the record straight that I will be challenging this legally if my son is not allowed to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Cabot, and I reside at 155 North Street in Sayreville. And my daughter is also a student at the middle school. And my daughter and her friends were talking yesterday about this shooting and what it meant to be protesting. They didn't even understand what happened and why they would need to protest. The protest that's being set up is being sponsored by the Action Network. The Action Network is a well-oiled, well-funded political machine in D.C. that is stirring up these protests. I don't know why this happened before Sandy Hook. We've had many shootings and we didn't have walkouts. Okay, so I think it's more politically motivated than it is actually concerned for the laws to be changed. However, I'm not here to debate that. I feel I could not have said it better than you did, Mr. Siak, that we really have to be concerned about our student safety. All of these shootings, these people got guns, these murderers, okay, and were able to gun down multiple people, dozens of people at all these public events, not because they had a gun, but because they were mentally ill. We do not know who lurks among the public in Sayreville. We don't know every person's mental health status here. So if we say, yes, we're going to allow the kids to walk out at this time, on this day, okay? We can have a nut out there who wants to prove a point, just like all these other nuts did, okay? And nobody knew before, except for this kid, he should have been caught, this boy, that did this in Florida. But we could have a nut out there that wants to mow down some people and make a point and become famous for it. We don't know that that person is not in our community. So by putting those kids, allowing them to walk out without really knowing why they're doing it, what they're supporting, okay? These kids they need a lesson. If we're gonna do something that will make a difference, why don't we do an assembly that teaches them what the gun laws are, and why we need better protection, why we need better mental health laws, why this boy, particularly in Florida, should have been cared for. We lost this boy in foster care system. He is the product of a very sad life, okay? Not just a nut with a gun. This boy was raised without any parents and has much more mental health issues than we can even imagine. But I think the kids writing a letter to Congress, from all the kids in Sayreville, thousands of kids writing a letter across the country, millions of kids, that would make a difference to our senators who, time and time again, Democratic and Republican, accept money from the NRA, which is why gun laws are not really the way there's no reason that I need a gun immediately. There's no reason why I need a gun that could mow down 20 people at once. There should be better waiting periods and better background checks. But walking out of school and putting other kids at risk for some unknown nut that may be in our society today, we might be walking with them every day in a ShopRite. We do not know that. Puts our kids in jeopardy, and I appreciate many, as do other parents, that you're not going to put our kids in jeopardy, and I would thank you for that. I also think it's foolish that we will waste our money that could be better yet spent on our children's sports programs, school activities, to defend a lawsuit that allows any kid to go out of school for 17 minutes with no congressman, no senator, nobody in sight that will be affected or moved by walking out of school when nobody knows you did it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public? Yes, sir.
James Foreski, 73 Wilson Avenue, Harlem, New Jersey. I'd like to first start off by saying thank you to Board of Education for all you do day in, day out for our kids. I have 3 kids in the district. I have one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary. We did put a lot of policies and procedures in place to keep our kids safe and secure. There's other things that we could build on now for time to come, which we all know. Metal detectors all has to fight the budgets. Having retired policemen, special officers level 3 at our schools. This is all we know. We all know that gun laws doesn't really apply to us here at Board of Education meeting. My biggest concern is we have security procedures in place for our children. And to have an uproar in school and breach the security that is in place goes against everything. Posting on national media, what's going on with the event, having kids open doors that are secured to walk out of school, and having kids leave. Now, we all talk about, I know they talked about bullying. Bullying happens every day. It has to be brought to the supervisor's attention immediately, and action should be taken. Now, what's action taken? That's what you just got to find out as a board. And with principals and vice principals of the schools. But as for standing up and walking out of a school and breaching security is a violation, I would feel, of a security risk for our children. And how many children are at the middle school that this is going to involve, and how many children are going to walk out.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Sophia Pena, 54 Kear Street. My understanding is this walkout, if there is a walkout, it's not a forced walkout. No one who doesn't want to go out, whose kids don't want to go out, they don't go out. That's number one. Number two, change doesn't happen when everything's hunky-dory. Change happens when people do things that people don't want for whatever the reason. Now, I get what you guys are saying, and quite frankly, I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, the logistics of it, but the fact that that wants to be done, there's nothing wrong with that. And that makes perfect sense. of why they're wanting to do. This is not that bad people walking, this is not people who want to cause trouble with anyone. This is something that's pre-planned, that is, that they're letting everyone know what they want to do. It's not something violent, it's not something anything. It's not a bad thing is what I'm trying to say. Now, if it's a big issue for the school, I get it. Maybe something can be done. I don't know, instead of a walkout, maybe it's something that the kid doesn't go to school that day, whoever doesn't want to go to school, and then, maybe do some sort of march or whatever. I don't know. But the whole point is that, well, yes, I understand your position and I agree with you. Change doesn't happen nice and easy. Change is hard. People get in trouble. That's why people protest. That's the whole point of it. No one wants to do it. No one wants to go through all of that. Who wants to do it? But sometimes you have to. And rather than shutting people down right away, maybe there's some sort of compromise with the community, with the families who want to do this. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board on this matter? All right, here, yes?
Debbie Ravel, 17 Driftwood Drive in Berlin. A lot of what you said was pretty much what I was going to say. The other dates that you were talking about, there's March 14th, March 24th, and April 20th are the 3 dates that are the big ones for kids to walk out of school. The one on April 20th is the National High School Walkout, and on Twitter, which is gaining like 150,000 tweets or retweets, whatever you call it, they are saying to walk out of high school and don't come back until Congress makes a new gun law. The problem with this is that there's no actual, they're not actually asking for anything. They're just saying, let's change the law. Well, what is that you want to change? I bet probably only 1% of everybody that's going to walk out of school on March 14th knows anything about gun laws or what's going on. I would like to thank you for your work, for your stand on what you're doing. I've been in the school district since 2005, and I've seen changes that you've done over the years because of things happen. Unfortunately, that's when action happens, is when something happens and then you guys come into action and you change things in the school district. So maybe a lot of new parents don't know all the things that have been changed and put in place. Can it be improved? Could we do more things? Absolutely. I am hoping that because school policy says that if you cut class, you get a penalty, you get disciplined. That kids that walk out get disciplined. If they walk out, that's fine, but they get their detention or their Saturday detention or whatever it is. If any staff walks out, they should be disciplined too, because my taxes are not paying for staff to walk out. And if staff is walking out, then who is watching the kids that are in school? I could go on, but it's more of a political thing. It should not be a school thing at all. And if somebody's walking out, it is involving every single student that's there, and that's not okay. A lot has changed in school districts, like prayer. Like, we don't have Christmas parties anymore. They're holiday parties because somebody doesn't like it. So I understand that there's 2 sides of this situation, but everybody's involved. So just because some people like it and some people don't like it doesn't mean that it's okay. So do it on your own time. And thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board on this matter? Okay, we'll have public again on the superintendent's report and on any item concerning the district at the end of the meeting. Any board members want to comment on this item before we go to our student representatives report?
If I may, Mr. Bell, I just want to thank you for your kind words. And just so you know, it's not so much that when things happen, that we take action. You know what it is, we learn in going to a lot of security meetings and talking to police officers and law enforcement officials. Every time, unfortunately, one of these incidents happen, we learn something new, something that we could perhaps put in place in our district. So just so you know, I mean, and for everybody's awareness, you know, it's at the forefront of everything we do here, because I've said it once and I'll say it and I'll continue to say it. You know, we can talk about the curriculum and we can talk about everything under the sun, but if your children don't come home at night, it's all for nothing, okay? And there's 9 of us up here, and we have varied opinions on a lot of things. The one thing we never, ever, ever disagree on is security, and making sure our children and staff come home at night. So just so you know, I mean, we are hard at work, and we do put a lot of things in that perhaps you don't know about, we can't discuss. Some of the things the police have implemented that they won't even tell us about. So just so you know, it's at the forefront, and it's not just because of what happened last week. I mean, this was the 18th one since January 1st, 18th violent gun incident in our schools. So, it's always there, we're always working on it, and we're always looking for any suggestions or ways to improve anything we're doing.
Any other board members with comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, having taught in the district for 17 years, I never once felt unsafe in my classroom. And when we would have lockdowns, the kids would, whisper to me what we would do if it really happened. And I would say to them, I would give my life for yours. And that's the truth, and they would do the same for me. We are here for the safety of the children. Things go on all over this country, and we do knee-jerk reactions. I want to state, and if you research it, you will find that I'm correct. After the Sandy Hook incident in Connecticut, that board implemented a $1 million security procedure to make those schools safer, and the people in Sandy Hook voted it down.
And young Mr. Diaz, if I may, just one more thing. Your mom touched on something very important. One of the biggest deterrents, or one of the biggest things that you could do to help everyone is if you even think something is not right, or you see something on social media, because I know there's this fake Facebook pages and the ones that they let everyone see. If you see something, you have to say it. A lot of things can be prevented. So I'm not quite sure how you handled that other situation, but in the future, you and your friends. Okay, good.
Eventually got handled.
Good. Well, if it shouldn't, I have no idea what really happened.
No offense to Mr. Judy, we
No,
tried.
no, but, in the future, it should be relatively quick, and if it's not, you can obviously contact Dr. Labby, but it's extremely important to let people know what's going on.
All right, the last piece that I'll close on this, because Mrs. Bloom kind of brought it up with regard to the teachers. When you follow the Sandy Hook situation, you may recall news reports of a teacher grabbing a student during the incident that was walking down the hall and yanking that student into their classroom. And, most people would agree that teacher was brave, and I agree. There's probably a very good chance that teacher didn't even have time to think. That teacher did that because that teacher was trained to do that. And that's the type of training and preparation that all of our teachers go through in order to protect our children. All right, so we will now move on to our attorney's report. Does our attorney have anything for public? It's rare that I get to ask him that because he's not normally at our public meetings, but thank you very much. That was the right answer, by the way.
He wants to go home.
He can go home.
Mr. Lewis can't go.
Yes, Mr. Lewis can't go home, but he is
Sharp
on.
as ever in that bow tie.
Alright, since we last met, it was only less than 2 weeks ago, so not many activities have been going on, but I'll take you guys in. The freshman orientation I did forget to bring up on last meeting.
Excuse me, could you use the mic, please?
Just hold on.
Alright, so I forgot to mention the freshman orientation last week, but it does go hand in hand with the scheduling for next year, and that we're having a presentation this Thursday for all 3 classes that need to be scheduled, and basically allows each student to get a feel for what classes and courses they want to take, difficulty levels, and it will allow them to be given a week or 2 weeks to decide what classes they want to take next year. The pep rally was actually a success. It went really smoothly. Overall, I thought people liked the mechanical shark. Maybe some mixed reviews, but I did think a lot of people enjoyed it, especially when Mr. Brown wrote on it, and it was safe, so that was a plus. The prom, I know it's a long way away, but people are starting to buy dresses. Dues are coming in for it, so that's something to look out for. as well as the National Honor Society applications. Those are starting to be filled out. Peers and Cool Kids, once again, are continuing to go to schools. I know they went to the UES last week, and they did some activities and worked with students. Heard that went pretty smoothly. And finally, to wrap it up, as for sports, spring sports are actually starting. Soon track, golf, and other track tryouts are March 2nd. So, in baseball and everything like that. Winter sports are coming to a close. Boys and girls basketball, they're looking at the state tournament now. Sadly, they got knocked out for GMC, but the state tournament will start next week, and hopefully they'll make a run. And the last thing I want to say is Strength and Musical. People are still working hard on that. It's coming soon, so no matter if it's teachers or students, backstage work or actors or anything like that, they're still working strong. So that's what's happening right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for our student rep? Okay, hearing none, we will continue with our agenda. Next up is our budget presentations. And the public, again, is welcome to stay. If you just came on the security issue and you want to leave, we will not also be offended. So you're welcome to do either. It's up to you.
And Mr. Sayak, as we discussed last week, if you, Mr. Harkin went into the technology budget presentation, but we do have a slide up there for our budget calendar, as you know. Since we're expecting the state to delay the preliminary approval of our budgets while we're waiting for state revenue, we decided to augment our calendar as well. So naturally, we pushed Dr. Shagyak and Mr. Glock-Malloy's presentations to today. We'll be taking those presentations that were originally scheduled for today. I believe that was buildings and grounds, capital projects, transportation and personnel. We'll move that to March 7th. And then if all goes well, we have our state figures. We're looking to hopefully ask you to approve the preliminary budget by March 20th. Okay? And now Mr. Glock-Malloy is going to present to you his technology budget.
Good morning, everyone. In working with the altered format for the presentations on the budget this year, focused on a couple of key areas that we've worked on in the 17-18 school year and what we're looking to do in the 18-19 school year. So first, looking at what we have either completed this year or what we are in the process of completing. One of the major ones that you see at the classroom level is we're working towards that 1-to-1 ratio for student devices in the classroom. And given the available devices and where we were able to make the most impact, right now our grades 1 through 3 is about mid-year this year are at that 1-to-1 ratio. We're looking to continue that through to next year and upcoming years to increase that across the school district. We've been working through our technology committees and our other committees throughout the district to implement a stakeholder-driven evaluation process in which we don't just buy software or hardware in a box, in which one building or one department or one agency within the district is operating software that's not compatible with other components in the district. We are looking to evaluate all software and hardware that's coming into the district and make decisions on existing platforms that are here already to see if it is more financially feasible or more towards our end goals of compatibility to replace or upgrade some of those systems within the district as we go through the next several years. One item that was originally scheduled for the 18-19 budget cycle that we've moved back into the 17-18 budget cycle, and something we're looking to do this spring, is our virtual server upgrade. The virtual server system was put in a number of years ago. It consolidated us from dozens of independent servers in our MDF into one singular virtual server system that allowed us to have upwards of about 100 servers contained in one system that was easier to manage, more cost effective, more power efficient. Fortunately, that server system has come to the end of its life, and going into next fall, we'd be unable to maintain that system going forward. To consolidate some of our budget efforts, we are bringing this back into the 17-18 year. We've looked at several options, and we found one that is fiscally feasible to do within the existing budget cycle. Increased targeted technology training programs. This was one of the things that came out of our strategic planning committees earlier this year, where many of our staff were looking for specific trainings in a lot of the technology programs that we have throughout the district. To that end, Sayreville University and the Professional Development Department, in combination with the Technology Department, have been working to bring more and more of those trainings out to our staff. And one of the big areas that we have been doing that, and that we're planning to do in the near future, is with the training for our new student information system, which will be rolling out to our teachers in September, but will go live in July. And actually, for our parents, our pre-K and K new registrants will actually see the first of that new student information system next week when that registration opens. To that end, the new student information system, last bullet point there, has been purchased. We are deep in the integration process of rolling from Power School to Encores. That is an ongoing process that will continue throughout the end of June, and we will see that in full force when we return to school next year. Technology budget items in 17-18, many of these which I talked about already. Continued support for our existing infrastructure systems. We completed major network security upgrades this year, which have already seen countless of cyber events that we've been able to combat in a better fashion at this point. We added about 1,390 devices to our student use this year. We've implemented a secondary internet connection, given that internet is a primary use for a lot of our instruction and a lot of our operations at this point. We have now a failover if our primary goes down. We've added interactive boards to a number of classrooms around the district. We implemented a visitor and staff ID system within the district. Many parents that have come into the schools have seen the visitor ID system, which our campus monitors operate at the front doors. The staff ID system has started to be installed within the individual buildings, and if you are coming into any of the buildings, or if staff are coming in, they will probably, in 4 of our buildings right now, they will see these near the main entrances, and we'll see them in the remainder of the buildings soon. The business office is working on rolling out a new budget payroll personnel software. We did a number of media center and computer lab upgrades throughout the district. Much of that was in the middle school and the high school this year. We did do some work in the upper elementary school and the elementary schools as well. Things such as replacing CRT monitors with more efficient flat screen monitors, replacing desktops with mobile devices to allow for better instructional practice, and a lot of other items of that nature. The new student information system, we have a new HIV management system in place, virtual server upgrades which we're working on. We have several new technology staff positions to support the technology in all of our buildings. We also have a new director of technology operations and digital security for this year. Going forward into 18-19, we're looking to continue to increase those one-to-one devices within the schools. We're looking to deploy wherever possible a single sign-on solution so that our staff and our students are not faced with having to memorize countless usernames and passwords. Continue virtual server infrastructure upgrades, which, although we'll be starting that within this budget cycle, we will probably finish that out in the summer period of next year. We are looking, and this is probably our major project for next year, to upgrade our network and switch wireless infrastructure. Part of our strategic plan was to do this by the end of 2021. Through some discussions with the Finance Committee and with Ms. Hill and Dr. Labby, we've come up with some creative financial means where we may actually be able to implement this either fully or near fully in next year without direct impacts to the full cost of the project to next year's budget through some financing agreements. Basically, what we're looking at here is, while we all focus on our Chromebooks and our software and our devices that are in the classrooms, unfortunately, none of that works if we don't have the wireless and the network switch infrastructures to support it. By the end of 2021, all of our network switching infrastructure and wireless infrastructure will be at the end of its life, and that poses a significant risk to us to continue to offer the services that we do in the district right now. For instance, if a network switch is end of life, at that point, we could have entire portions of a building or entire buildings down without internet connectivity for weeks at a time. So while this isn't front and something that you see in the classrooms on a day-to-day basis, this is critical to the operation of the district and of supplying our staff and students with the technology that they need. The new student information system will be fully online as of July 1. And we're also looking to form a unified committee with our professional development, our curriculum departments, to further drive what we are doing with technology, software, hardware, training as we go forward. Looking at our key items here, again, we're looking to add about 300 devices for next year. Achieve 3000 is the primary software that has been in our upper grade levels, is moving down to the UES, network and switch upgrades, wireless upgrades, continued maintenance of our ongoing systems, warranties, hardware and software, and then continue some of our media center and computer lab upgrades into year 2 of that phase. And at the moment, these are the major items that we're pursuing in next year's budget.
Anyone have any questions?
From a security, network security standpoint, is there anything in the budget that we need to be aware of, or anything that has been cut or is not in the budget that you absolutely require in order to facilitate the security of our network?
This year, we replaced our firewall and a number of other security components, and that was a huge advancement for us, and that has greatly helped in securing our network overall. Some of the things that we were looking at for next year's budget, while not critical, compared to our wireless and our switch infrastructure and things of that nature, we were looking at something that you actually suggested, Mr. Zach, which was services where during off hours that our security and even our network uptime would be monitored, so that when we come back from a vacation, 3-day weekend, we don't come into systems being down because our technology staff doesn't work 24/7/365. At the moment, that's tabled as part of the budget. That's something we'll continue to look at and pursue as we go into future year budgets. That would be something that would benefit both our ability to monitor security around the clock as well as monitor uptime, so that when staff and teachers come into the classrooms after a holiday weekend, everything is up and running and ready to go.
And do you know offhand how much that costs?
We had priced out a number of options. Both of them were fairly pricey. I believe, and Mr. Reynolds, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe independently the security and the maintenance were both looking at about $60,000 to $80,000 items annually. That sounds about right.
Each or in total? Each, of course.
Or either or. They have their own individual components. They're pricey. But basically what you're paying for is an outside service to provide 24/7, 365 monitoring.
Who you guys got?
We did look at options for, could we just do it off time? Fortunately, we found no companies that were willing to do that.
Got it. Other questions from the board with regard to technology?
Mr. Simon.
Mr. Rashad?
Just recently, Optimum has been flashing on their channels about that they picked up speed and capacity. Have you noticed anything in our district that correspond to that?
Well, we do use Lightpath, which is under the same parent company as Optimum. Our speeds are based on contracts that we've established with these companies. So while they're proposing higher speeds for home users, it doesn't directly impact our capabilities. Overall, for a number of negotiating agreements that the state and agencies like the Middlesex Regional Commission, we've been able to increase our speed in the district without increased costs, and that contract is actually up in April. It is something that's out for bid right now. So it does look at this time that we will be able to increase our speed without increasing costs to the district and possibly even decreasing costs on our primary internet connection. But to that end, we're also nowhere near our capacity at this point. So at the moment, what we hit on a daily basis, even in our highest traffic, is not nearing what we are capable of hitting.
The other question, Mr. Sack, I have, is Verizon still as our backup unit with the phone service as from years ago?
We do have a number of fax machines and security systems and elevator phone systems that are still driven off a Verizon-based copper phone system. It's not directly through Verizon, it's through another company called Excel. They are Verizon lines. They're not providing any of our primary phone communication, however, either primary or backup. They're just secondary services, fax, burglar, and the elevator system.
Thank you. Any other board members? Yes, Mrs. Backup.
The purchase of the 300 devices, is that what you need to drive the 1-to-1 and K-to-3?
During our initial project planning for the strategic plan, We were looking at 1,200 devices a year. We brought in just a little bit over that this year. The 300 devices is what we were able to sustain in the budget so far this year. So ideally, to go to that one-to-one maintenance and replacement cycle that has been discussed as part of the strategic plan, we'd be looking at about 1,200 devices a year for the next 5 years.
Okay, so if you only buy 300, what ratio does that give you?
That will continue to drive towards, so next year our focus is really on supplying those one-to-one devices towards K1 as well as 4-5. We will try to break up the devices so that each grade level that needs it does get some. But our primary focus as far as strategic plan was to focus on K1 and then 4-5.
But Mr. Lockmiller, factoring out end of life, what is our current ratio?
Our current ratio last check, we were just under the 2-to-1 ratio district-wide. So we're getting there. We definitely are. But we were at the 1-to-1 for the grades 1 to 3 level this year. And that number.
1-to-1 now.
1-to-1 in grades 1, 2, and 3 this year. Yes.
1, 2, and 3, not K.
No. Our hope next year was pre-K, K would be in that 1-to-1 ratio as well, based on the 1,200 device units.
But what exacerbates that is the unknown future with regard to end-of-life operating services for the Chromebooks, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you just want to explain that, because I know the finance committee had a discussion, the board may not be aware of that aspect.
We have about just shy of 3,000 devices that came in as part of the original Sandy grant, which was our initial Chromebook purchases. Those devices have all already hit their end-of-life period. So as far as Google is concerned, the announcements that have come out so far is that once a Chromebook hits its end of life, they no longer guarantee an update for that device. At the moment, they also haven't cut off any of the updates to our devices or even older devices. It puts us at a risk that those 3,000 or just shy of 3,000 devices could at any point stop receiving updates, which are going into a park test or something of that nature where they may need to be on a specific version. Those devices may not be viable anymore. Fortunately, we have brought in devices over the years other than that first year purchase. So not all of our devices would run into that problem. So as far as a park compliance, we would have enough devices still. We'd have to roll the devices throughout the district again, but we could sustain that even if all of our Samsung Chromebooks were cut off from park viability. The other component there is if they stop receiving updates, they will eventually become a security risk to our network as well because they stop getting security updates. So it's definitely something we want to focus on, filtering out those 3,000 devices. However, at this moment in time, they're still fully functional, they're still viable classroom devices, and they are still receiving updates. It's just an unknown factor now as to when they will stop receiving those.
Any other board members with questions?
The network switch upgrades and the wireless upgrades, if you do them in the 18-19, is it complete or is it something that has to continue over more than 1 year?
The current project that we're looking at, thanks to some of the items that came up during our finance committee meeting, would complete the project in that 18-19 year. We'd be financing that over the next several budget years, so it would be an impact to the technology budget. But the project itself, the physical equipment, would be in place next year, where our original plan was to do it in pieces over the next 3 years.
And what's the cost?
Cost overall, for the entire project, without the financing component, it was about 1.5 million. 1.6 million.
But we secured a lease, we're going to do a lease purchase agreement. And one of the reasons why.
Or how many years?
5 years.
5 years. One of the reasons why we also wanted to do the outright purchase through the lease purchase agreement is so that
To
we
leverage
can
E-rate
capitalize
this year.
on our E-rate.
Under the current federal administration, there hasn't been a real guarantee that E-rate will be renewed, or if it is renewed, we don't truly know what that renewal will look like. So this is one of the last periods that we'll be able to leverage a 50% essentially give back to the district on a lot of this material, which will be eligible for E-rate funding.
To the tune of about $300,000, correct?
Yes.
So
So we
will
saved
these
$3,000.
upgrades last 5 years, or will
Yes.
we have to upgrade again before 5 years?
One of the things that we looked at this time around was doing a different model than the current hardware infrastructure we have for the access points and switches, in which it's more of a cloud-based model. While we will have physical equipment here, the operating systems are driven by a cloud model, which will allow for a much longer update period and pathway. We will probably be faced with our access points and switches more to the fact that we'll hit capacity at some point in the future than we will necessarily hit an end-of-life period again using this particular system that we're looking at. So 5 years should be not a problem at all, and we should be able to go well beyond that as well.
Any other questions?
I just want to compliment Mr. Blackmore. I mean, you see his budget, it's amazingly large. His attention to detail with regard to it is truly inspiring. He came into this process with 4 major infrastructural goals. All of those goals are either in this budget or will be purchased this current school year. And that was the warranties for the switches, the switches themselves, the access points for the Wi-Fi, and the upgrade of the virtual server, which we're actually going to do during this budget year. So thanks to his leadership and that of Mr. Waranowitz's, we're able to accomplish a great deal. And, you know, I receive a lot of calls from parents and inquiries from parents with regard to devices and so forth. And yes, that is certainly a goal of ours to increase the number of devices so that we can get as close to a 1-to-1 ratio as possible. But what a lot of people don't realize is how much it costs on the back end to do all those things. To have more devices, you need a greater infrastructure. So kudos to Mr. Glockmaloy and Mr. Waranowitz for keeping a close eye on that as we progress. And Mr. Kronensberger as well, keeping an eye on the electrical infrastructure that we need to continue to support all this technology is quite the endeavor too. So great teamwork there by the three of you.
And in many ways, Dr. Live, it actually leads to a smoother rollout. I know of some neighboring districts that have done one-to-one initiatives all at once, and one of the things that they forgot, for example, to really plan more effectively was the professional development behind it as well. So I think the fact that we're staging it helps with that.
Absolutely.
Any other board member questions on technology? Thank you, Mr. Glockmaloy.
And now, Dr. Shayak.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about our curriculum and instruction budget. At the last meeting, the principals did a really good job of giving you a lot of information about some of the things that are going on in their individual schools regarding curriculum and instruction, along with some of their other activities. But from a district-wide perspective, I'll start off by talking a little bit about what some of our curriculum and instruction goals were for this current school year. Okay, and these are all goals that the budget helped to support these goals, the current school budget. So the first one is related to students in kindergarten and first grade showing improvement in their overall literacy skills. Of course, we want all of the students to show improvement in their overall literacy skills, but the board was generous enough to devote a large portion of our budget to specifically target those 2 grade levels for this current school year. Second goal for the school year was for students in grades 6 to 8 to increase their ability to read and comprehend informational text. Okay, the reason this is really important is because not only is PARC assessment comprised of 60 to 70% informational text, but also now the SATs and the PSATs, most of the reading and the writing is focused on informational text. Okay, so in grade 6 through 8, we implemented, I think you heard Mr. Block-Malloy mention, and I think last meeting, Ms. Jakubik achieved 3,000, which is targeted towards improving students' informational reading skills. Our third bullet is students in kindergarten through grade 5 will show improvement in their overall mathematics skills. Okay, so in math, we have a number of programs that we use for the children, but we have found ST Math to be particularly effective for the students in grades K through 5. The next goal was provide at-risk students with the tiered system of support, which includes the literacy and the math academies. Hundreds of children attend our literacy and math academies before school in grades K through 8. We're actually approving at tonight's board meeting some additional math tutorials for Algebra 1 for both the middle school and for the high school students. Okay. So the board has been extremely supportive of these programs for our children. Then the last bullet point is to increase opportunities for all staff to engage in professional development and training sessions related to best practice. You may have heard us talk about Sayreville University, which is our professional development program. This is actually the 3rd year of Sayreville University. And they're doing amazing things. We provide a great deal of professional development for our teachers, and we're actually beginning to invite teachers from other districts who are actually paying to participate in some of our professional development activities. Okay, so here are some of the things the specifics that we did with the money and we're working on for this year related to those goals. We have new calculus textbooks at the high school to align with the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, new science texts for chemistry, physics, environmental science, and some updates for the middle school texts to align with the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which are aligned with the next generation science standards. With budget monies this year, we purchased some vocabulary books for the high school, some additional English language learner texts, supplemental novels for the high school, and a new novel for the 6th grade curriculum. We have a new reading program in grades K and 1, the Fontes and Pinnell classroom system, which has been received very, very well by our students and our teachers. We have added a great number of books for guided reading programs in not just K and 1, but in grades 2 through 5 also. And part of the guided reading program, we have included quite a few texts in science and social studies. Again, so students can read this informational text at their own individualized reading level. We purchased this year new science kits for all the grades in kindergarten through 5th grade. We have educational technology programs, including ST Math, 10 marks in grades 6 through 8, IXL for math also in grades K through 5, RAS Kids, reading A to Z, Achieve 3000. We have APEX, our online courses where students can elect to take courses that are not offered here at the high school. Some of them are AP courses, others are microeconomics, macroeconomics, etc. So that students are able to take those classes online through APEX. And Link It, which is an online assessment system and data warehousing. The Literacy Academy again, and ongoing sustained in-district professional development. Just want to give you a few numbers here with our professional development. Last year, at the end of 2017, 16-17 school year, 632 staff members participated in Sayreville University professional development. So far this year to date, we have about 550 teachers. We still have 4 months to go. And it's not just teachers. We have programs for bus drivers, for paraprofessionals, and like I said, we have had a number of people who have participated from other districts who are actually paying a fee because we're doing such a great job with this. We're providing things to the teachers, drop-in sessions, where the professional development, Mrs. DeSantis and Mrs. Obrick will go to a school. They will be there all day. They'll advertise it to the teachers. They might have a topic that they can demonstrate and work with the teachers on in about 30 minutes. They're there, they're available in the central location, and teachers can just drop in, whether it's on their planning period or their lunch period. And they've had great success with that. So lots of great ideas. We're doing sheltered instruction, which is a program that's designed to help out the English language learners. And we have some outside people who are participating in that with us. So, now let's talk about some of our goals for this upcoming school year. Again, students in kindergarten through grade 2 will show improvement in their overall literacy skills. So we're moving that up to grade 2. Students in grades 4 to 8 will increase their ability to read and comprehend informational text. Part of the budget, which is actually in Mr. Block-Malloy, is for Achieve 3000, which is a computerized program that is designed for students to read at their level informational text. This year we did it at the middle school. We are proposing to move it to the 4th and 5th grade for next year. Next one, increase the percentage of Algebra 1 students meeting or exceeding expectations on Algebra 1 PARCC assessment. There was a lot of talk about this at the last meeting, and we want to continue to improve our scores on it. Our scores have improved. 2 years ago, 31% of our students district-wide passed Algebra 1 PARCC. In the 15-16 school year, 30% passed. Last year, 44% of our students district-wide passed the Algebra 1 PARCC. Okay. And that coincides with moving the Algebra 1 down to 8th grade, where the majority of our 8th graders are taking Algebra 1. However, we still realize we have a large percentage that needs to pass. It's a graduation requirement. So we're really going to concentrate our efforts on improving that, getting more of our students to pass that. Okay. Increase the academic achievement of English language learners. There are new requirements for English language learners to show growth on our state assessments. So we are proposing to get some new materials for those students for next year. Increase the academic achievement of all students through effective instruction, the challenging, rigorous curriculum, and multiple pathways for students to meet their individual needs. That kind of sums up everything that we are working on in curriculum and instruction. So some of the programs, some of the things we're asking for funding in the new budget is the reading program for grade 2. We started this year in kindergarten and 1st grade. We want to move the Fontes and Pinnell classroom system up to grade 2 for the 18-19 school year. Additional materials to support kindergarten and grade 1 literacy. We purchased last year the primary components of that system. It's a brand new system. They're coming out with some new components to it, so we would like to include some of those items for our teachers. Additional grade level novels. There's nothing like getting a group of kids together, or everyone in the grade level, reading the same novel. Leveled books for guided reading programs. Again, we are continually supplementing what we have. We have teachers who say, with the new Fontes and Pinnell system, these students, these young students, that they're moving through the books very quickly. So we want to provide more and more books for them. Okay, materials for classroom libraries. We encourage the students to read at every opportunity, so we want to have plenty of books available for the students, and for the students to take those books home. Take home the individualized bag of books to read, some books right at their own level. Achieve 3,000 for grades 4 to 6, or 4 to 5, I should say. We currently have it in grade 6, but we would like to add that for grades 4 and 5. New ELL texts for grades 6 through 8. We would like to continue our educational technology programs that are currently in place this year and are very successful. Again, the Literacy Academy, science supplies. We got these great science kits this year, but a lot of our science is hands-on. So we have to replace a number of the supplies that are in the kits. And again, ongoing sustained in-district professional development. We're on a roll with that, and we really want to continue that. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Some of these you put like grade level novels, classroom library, science supplies. Is that district wide or are they specific schools?
No, it's district-wide.
If so, it doesn't say, then it's district wide.
Correct.
This, the Algebra 1 piece is kind of a mixed bag in that, we've got many more students as a percentage of, as a percentage, more students in Sayreville are taking Algebra 1 than other districts in the state, so that's good.
At the middle school level.
At the middle school level, correct. So that's good. They're only passing at a 44% rate, so that's not so good. But then we have remedial programs that we need at the high school, which are also, a challenge obviously as well for, the students that take. When I look at the 18-19 budget, what resources are we supplying, if any of these, that are directly targeted toward closing that gap on Algebra 1?
Okay. Well, we're certainly looking to do some tutorials with those students. And just one thing, I gathered together some data based on going back a few years before we had Algebra 1, when it was primarily at the high school. In 2014-15, the middle school, 82% of the students passed Algebra 1 because very few students were taking Algebra 1 as 8th grade. There were our top math students who were taking it. As a matter of fact, in the 14-15 school year at the middle school, we had 119 students enrolled in Algebra 1. 82% of those students passed the Algebra 1 part. The high school level that year, we had 319 students, and 13% passed the Algebra 1 part. In 15-16, the middle school had 338 students enrolled in Algebra 1. It's the year that we started the push to have them take it in 8th grade. 48% of those students passed Algebra 1. The high school that year had actually 342 students because that was kind of the double year. 13% of those students passed Algebra 1. In 16-17 school year, 374 students, this was last year, took Algebra 1 at the 8th grade level. 60% of those students passed Algebra 1 part. The high school last year had 175 students in Algebra 1. 7% passed.
So,
7.
So if my Algebra 1 is correct, we're actually passing, or more students are passing
Yes.
the course now that we've pushed it down
Yes, yes.
than when we had it up at the high school level.
Yes, district-wide, and I think I mentioned it earlier, district-wide, in the 14-15 school year, 31% of our students passed the Algebra 1 part. In 15-16, 30% district-wide passed the Algebra 1 part. Last year, in 16-17, 44% of our students passed the Algebra 1 part, and that's right in line with the state average. So, I know 44% does not sound like something to celebrate. and we certainly want to improve them. So, you know, it's going in the right direction. I mean, we made a huge leap in 1 year, and we're hoping that this year it will be even higher.
And for those that do need remediation, we're doing it earlier.
Yes, what we're doing for the students right now, like I said, tonight you're going to be approving some tutorial teachers at both the middle school and high school for an intensive tutorial program leading right up to Park. We are looking to even do it for the students. Traditionally, it's a little tough to get students to stay after school for some of these programs. We're looking into possibly doing things at lunchtime with the students. Okay.
And if you don't mind me jumping in on the bandwagon a little bit with the Algebra 1, just to put this in perspective for you, when compared to districts in our district factor grouping, as well as similarly sized districts in terms of enrollment, districts in Middlesex County and the state, we are above the average for DFG. We are above the average for similarly sized school districts. We are above the state average, and we are equal to the average in Middlesex County.
And we have more of our students taking it in 8th grade.
And our kids are taking it in 8th grade.
And, you know, one of the reasons I think, you know, we have in the 8th grade, the middle school math is a double period. It's a double block. So, I mean, it's a great opportunity to have more students taking it in the double block. And something else that we're working on, because we have a number of students who passed the course but did not pass the Algebra 1 exam. Okay? A lot of questions about why that happens. Many of those students are very, very close to passing. They're at the approaching level. There's 5 different levels on Park. There's exceeds, meets, approaching, partially proficient, and I think not proficient. I forget what they call each one of them. What we're really looking at are all those students who have not passed, but particularly those who are in the approaching area. Because, you know, it could be a difference of a question that they missed, that they're not passing. So, because it's a graduation requirement for students who are currently in 9th grade and lower, currently this is a graduation requirement, things may change, that the students have to pass Algebra 1 Park. So what we're doing is, Mrs. Maharana, our new math supervisor, she, Mr. Gluhusky, Mr. Brown, and Mrs. Sokola and I, we met, and she is designing some online modules for the students to work on. When they're done working on the online modules, this will be towards the end of the school year. And once they're done with that, they will take an assessment. We will have them take an assessment, and we will also have teachers and National Honor Society students available to help answer questions and help with these students as they work through the online modules on their own time. Then we can administer to them the Algebra 1 Park. I think it's the first week in August, to give them another chance to pass. Okay? Because that's the idea. We have a significant number of students who have not yet passed. If those students pass, they're good to go. Those that do not pass or that do not participate in the online modules, they will take a remedial class for the first half of the year, and then they will be able to take the Park, Algebra 1 Park again in December. So we're trying to provide them with as many opportunities to retake the exam. They have to be involved. In order to be allowed to retake the exam, they have to be involved in some type of a program that we design. So.
Any other board members with questions, comments? Mr. Machado? One of the things that for years has always bothered me is parental participation in this. I'd like to have a survey maybe one day with the students not knowing about it, asking them, did you get help at home with your homework? Do you get help at home doing any of the extracurricular
like helping them, because, we can lay out the format to do and work, but if there's no parental support, we're, our feet are just above, and we're going nowhere.
Parental support is certainly important. It's really difficult sometimes, especially when you're talking about if you're speaking about Algebra 1 in particular, sometimes that's a little bit tough for parents to work with their children on that.
No, I understand that, but I'm
It's
saying
tough.
like with the reading or comprehensive reading, just parental participation with the students at home.
We encourage it however we can with the reading. In the lower grades, we send home students with a bag of books, and that's often their homework for the evening, is to read something from their bag of books, and maybe they might have to write a little sentence or two in a journal. So we do, and we encourage the parents, and the teachers do talk to the parents about getting involved and reading with their children, which is so important, absolutely. It really is.
The other struggle we have is, we always assume, or I should say, we sometimes assume that, the lack of parent engagement is a lack of desire. With 33% of our students on free and reduced lunch, it may be a lack of time due to having a second job. I don't know the exact percentage, I'm sure one of you knows it, but the percentage of students who are English language learners, chances are their parents may also be English language learners as well. That could be a challenge with the reading comprehension.
Right.
So certainly, I agree with you. We need to get parents more involved. It's a challenge with the barriers that we face on so many fronts. And some of it, Mr. Bishada, is happening. You're right. Other thoughts or comments?
I have a question. It's probably a little more global. With less than half the students passing this Algebra 1, and clearly since we're in line with the state and the county and everything, is there anything on a higher level, more spread out on what's driving such a low number? And since it's going to be a graduation requirement, is there any talk outside the realm of like our individual school, like across the state? What's driving the number to be so low?
No, there is no, it's just a whole variety of things that I think contribute.
So every individual school is doing their own push. There's no consistencies across the state on why the numbers are so
I think
low.
if you look at the trend, for instance, I was just looking at our third graders. Our third graders 3 years ago in math were below 50%, and now this past assessment, I believe they were 56%, 55%, which, by the way, our third graders this year surpassed everybody in comparison. So I think that when you go ahead and make this paradigm shift to the Common Core State Standards, and I know we don't call it that anymore, but that's what it is, we're still basically using that. And then we're using an assessment based upon that to, evaluate the performance of our students. It takes time, more than just a couple of years, 3-4 years, to begin to slowly reap the benefits of the changes in that curriculum. But you can see by the increase over the years nationally, well, not nationally, because there's only about five states that take the bar, but at least in New Jersey, you can see the increase statewide in the performance of our kids meeting the expectations in Algebra 1. And I think that as these current third graders move to 8th grade and take the Algebra 1, I'm expecting, and don't put this out there as being concrete, I've done that before during these meetings, I'm expecting well over, I know, with the budget, right? I'm expecting somewhere around, 60 to close to 65% of our kids by the time that rolls around, if not more, based upon the performance of our current third graders, as well as just a trend for the performance of our students on that assessment to increase.
But you're only basing that trend performance if we continue with the park, not if we change the test.
Well, I don't think that New Jersey is going to change the New Jersey state standards anytime soon. I'm even willing to bet that the park doesn't go away anytime soon. But I'm hoping that if the state does decide to replace the park, I'm hoping that they replace it with someone with an assessment that is valid with regard to New Jersey state standard expectations.
Well, pre-park, were the numbers still below 50%?
No, not in New Jersey yet.
No, it was a very different assessment. I mean, each grade level assessed, it was non-subject specific.
And if you remember, there were countless kids that got, perfect scores on that assessment. So many people, that's what led to this movement, because many people viewed that assessment as being an assessment of mediocrity.
I'm also going to ask a kind of a global question. As I visit these schools around the country, one of the big trends that I see, and again, this is another state, so it may have limitations here, project-based learning. Just about every school that I go to that they're showcasing is all centered around real-life problem solving. I don't even know if they have a state assessment, because all I see is real project-based learning. The students are engaged, the teachers are engaged. Is that something that we do? Is that something that's hindered here in New Jersey because of the park?
I mean, you want to jump in, but we do perform on quite a bit of project-based learning.
Yes, we do.
You don't always see those results because those are figured into a child's grades and so forth. But yeah, I mean, naturally, the emphasis is on our kids performing well in park assessment. And if you are in a state in which you're not taking the park and you're taking something else, and you do not have, a viable standardized testing instrument, well then maybe you can focus more time on those types of assessments. I don't know how states do that and still get the funding that they need from the federal government. But, I guess that's something that you can ask those.
I was just saying, and when I conclude my presidency and I've got some time to process this, I want to go back to the states and schools that I visited because, I mean, it's just, and look, it's possible they were just putting on a show for me and that happened to be their project-based learning day, and then when I left, they went back to, teaching, the skills needed to get past some type of state assessment. That I don't know.
And, I know we've talked about this probably ad nauseum this year, but, us moving to a standards-based report card is going to help us incredibly in our student performance as they get to the middle school and they start taking the Algebra 1 assessment and other types of park assessments. We're able to use that report carding system to identify areas of weakness in our students that we might not have identified previously. Already, Dr. Shediak has assembled her curriculum committee and they're reviewing our grading policies. One of the things that we're taking a good hard look at is the fact that, for instance, you see that 44% of our kids pass the Algebra 1. But if you looked at the number of kids that got A's in Algebra 1, it wouldn't be equal to that. So it's very disproportionate. So why is that? And someone mentioned homework. Mr. Bashad mentioned homework. Well, people don't realize how much homework can deflate a grade if you don't do it, or inflate a grade if you do it. So her curriculum committee is taking a good hard look at homework and class participation and those types of things that may either harm kids or inflate grades, but that is potentially harming a child too. Because then we have a child where, for instance, in language arts, the child could be getting A's and B's, but their GRA says that they're reading below grade level. Why is that? So that's where using a GRA, using a standards-based grading system truly benefits us. And I know I use this example plenty of times because it's probably the best example to use with regard to mathematics. If you look at the research, and much of it comes out of Stanford University, the greatest barrier for children in terms of learning algebra is fractions. And it's probably the one area that more of our kids than not struggle in. And using a standardized report card system, we can identify those specific areas and in those specific children and focus in on it so that they don't become one of those children by the time they get to 8th grade who are not meeting expectations in algebra.
Yes, Mrs. Bennett.
That just generated another question because I had read a lot of things. Are we moving towards not assigning homework? Are we going to have any policies about cutting back on the amount of homework?
I know they're going to take a good hard look at it.
We began to look at it just
I know
this
there's
past week.
studies out there that say homework isn't really necessarily helping.
You're right.
So are we looking at that?
Can I get an amen?
The curriculum.
Parents do not like homework.
I understand. The curriculum committee this year we turned it into the curriculum/grading committee. And we've been looking all year, we just had our most recent meeting on Thursday. We've been looking at the current grading policies, dissecting them to try to see where we feel they can be improved. I mean, honestly, the grading regulation that's in effect now I sat on the committee as a teacher more than 15 years ago.
I remember when that was.
Right, when that was designed. So it's time for a change. We are also looking at the homework policy. We had a very good discussion about it on Thursday. We have the committee is comprised of teachers from, I think, every school. We have many different disciplines, both, because we need their input. We need a phys ed teacher. We need a music teacher. We need everyone, not just from the four core content areas, but we need all those teachers, and we need the perspective from kindergarten teachers up through AP teachers and so on. So we're working on that. We are certainly looking at, we've looked at other districts' policies. We've looked at the research on homework, and we are, we're considering, do we put in time limits for it based on the grade level, and how that would work out practically, especially at the high school. We're looking at, many districts have homework-free days, where, homework blackout or vacations and long weekends and things like that. So we're looking at it all, and we are hoping to have something to bring to the administration and the governance committee to enact for the 18-19 school.
And student achievement too.
And student achievement, yes, not to forget.
And then added into that, we're looking at those summer packets that I know.
What's interesting, though, seriously, is that I've always been a proponent of homework should kind of just touch on what you learned for the day, maybe reinforce it a little bit, not spend 3-4 hours on it, there's no doubt. And I'm not saying that we do this, please don't think that, but I'll be blunt as I usually am. I think it could be used as a tool. Oh, he did all his homework, he's going to pass, or she's going to pass. It's an easy way to get kids to graduation, and I think that's a scary notion.
And things like that.
They're not ready for high school,
Right.
post-high school, which is, I think, as a board, we've really been at least talking seriously about for the last year and a half. Getting these kids ready for post-high school,
Right.
whatever that may be.
And the research, basically, if you look at it, I'm sure you're going to find studies that are for and studies that are against, but if you look, and you consolidate it and review it, basically you can draw the conclusion that the teacher that gives a strong opening or anticipatory set, as we refer to it, in a lesson where they engage the children in a review of what they learned the previous day, it's just as strong as doing homework. And practice for the sake of practice is not effective. Meaningful practice is what's effective. And meaningful is not dictated by quantity, it's dictated by quality. And that's what the research says.
Right, and when we started our discussion on Thursday with the committee, I posed to them question, I want you to think about what's the purpose of homework? Why are teachers assigning homework? And that's really got to be at the forefront.
That's the essential question.
Right, it really is. It's the essential question. And from there, we will, come up with recommendations for a policy. And I think people will be pleased with it. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. You got 1993, right? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from Dr. Shediak regarding curriculum instruction? Thank you, Dr. Shediak.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to our correspondence. We have our monthly work order and maintenance reports. We'll move on next to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the regular and executive session minutes of February 7th? So moved by Mr. Walsh, second by Mr. Machado. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Backo?
Yes.
Mr. Machado?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak.
Yes, there are no district highlights, correct? No highlights. Okay, very good. Move on to the superintendent's report.
I'd like to begin with, as we always do, Vision 2030, Finance and Infrastructure. Number 12 on page 3, we are once again trying to use Gov Deals to sell, dispose, or obsolete equipment. In this particular case, it is a 1998 bus. So we're hoping to find someone like the Partridge Family to sell that and make some money off it. Did I just use a Partridge Family reference? Yes, I did. Number 19, which you can find on the addendum, we're incredibly happy to once again receive such a generous and gracious donation from the DuPont Electronics and Imaging Company to send 2 of our staff members to Atlanta, Georgia for the National Conference on Science. So we can't thank them enough, and we're asking you to basically approve that. And we do have a change,
Yes.
Ms. Oak.
I just need to withdraw item number 4 under finance and treasurer's report. The information I gave the treasurer had an incorrect number on it, so it just needs to be revised by 20 cents. So I'll put it on the next agenda.
Right, so we're withdrawing.
Yes.
We're withdrawing number 4.
Any questions on finance and infrastructure?
Aaron, quick question on number 8. You don't have to answer today, maybe get back to me in the email. There's a item on the athletic account bill list for balance adjustment non-stated money, 185.
Yeah, I know what that is. That it was actually a bank error. An official cashed their check, and they scanned in another company's check on top of it. So you'll actually see it goes in and out.
Oh, okay.
We adjusted it, and then the bank credited us after that. So
One other question on 13, number J. More for Dr. Labby, I guess. That's the day after the play. I have some concerns because the play, they don't have their Sunday matinee show, so usually on Saturdays they have their award nights and the kids go afterwards to have their little parties from doing other work since December. Now because we're renting out I'm just concerned because now because we're renting the school out for the following day, and if the kids are going to take the sets down, break everything down, and put everything away before this gets used so that nothing happens to the sets that are rented and the costumes and I think there's a big dragon they had this year too. So I just have concerns. I don't know if we should really rent it because there's be a lot of work for the kids to do after the play to put everything away so that everything's safe and secure.
I mean, it might be a problem with the patrons since they probably have already, we've already filled out a permit. If you don't mind me speaking that over with Mr. Kohlensberger to see if we can safely, without destroying the sets, move them in time to the other group to prepare and put them in such a safe place.
Mr. Kraft would know more of it.
Yeah, so why don't Mr. Kohlensberger and Mr. Kraft, maybe you guys can get together to see if that's logistically possible for you to move those sets after the play, even if we have to, give the guys a little bit more time.
I'll talk to them tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Kohlensberger. Good point, though, Mr. Bobby.
Any other concerns, finance and infrastructure? Next.
Student achievement, we have some co-curricular trips and activities as we always do. We're asking to approve numbers 1 through 10 as well as number 12, which you can find in the addendum. The big ones there, we have on March 7th, 75 of our students from the high school junior class going to the Career Council Central New Jersey College Fair at Bishop Arp High School, and as something we started a while ago. It's been very productive for our students in terms of getting them into that mode of beginning to go out and look for colleges and send out applications and so forth. Also, Project Before Preschool is going to hold an open house, and that's for 2018-19 registration. So if you remember correctly, in the past several years, we've done that open house in June. Mr. Nasser has asked that we move that open house to February so that we can answer more parent questions about registration, who's eligible, who's not, what to bring in when they're registering the children. Any questions on anything on student achievement?
Next.
Okay, on governance, we ask you to approve several policies, regulations, and exhibits for a first reading during our last meeting. Now we're asking you to approve all of those for a second reading. And I do apologize, I know that we did not provide you with this, the strike through or the edits. We made a point of doing that. However, I do know that there were some copying errors made with these two, and I apologize for that as well.
The strike-throughs were sent out this morning, I
Yes,
know. Right?
yes, but there was an error in the person that made the
Those
copy.
ones we use, that's the ones for the record.
Yes, for the board, yes, so you can see the changes. Now, naturally, if it's a new policy or exhibit, you're not gonna have strike-throughs. Number two, which can be found on page 8, we're asking you for a second and final time to repeal the parent involvement council policy as well as the parent involvement council representative to the board of education policy. And that was duly noted during our last meeting by Mr. Simon. And then finally, number 3, which also can be found on page 8, we're asking you to approve for a first reading the policy on the superintendent of schools, and essentially that policy was changed so that it could reflect the new evaluation process for the superintendent, as well as a new instrument that we're going to use this year. Supervision. Mr. Sayer, if you can help me recall the major changes to supervision.
The New Jersey Student Learning Standards were
Correct.
incorporated in there, as well as the requirement for the professional learning communities, the BLC.
There you go, the PLC. So just some minor revisions there. And then finally, policy 6171.3, which is the Title I, improving the academic achievement of parent-family engagement policy. And we're asking you to also approve that for a first reading. Any questions on anything on Vision 2030 governance?
The 2131 policy, are those changes that are being made there specific to Sayreville, or is this something that's being done?
No, they're actually part of the New Jersey School Board Association policy, so there's nothing,
So everything's
we're not
changed.
deviating, no, it's the same policy. They also updated the superintendent evaluation instrument as well, which will be used when we go to evaluate the superintendent.
So we're still using the Jersey School Board?
Correct.
Yes. And Vision 2030 personnel. We're asking number 1 to accept the retirement of Patricia Wisk. I'm going to hold off on reading about Patty because we do have someone else that is going to be retiring on March 7th. So I would like to do my due diligence for both of those people on March 7th. So I will read something, as we always do about everyone that retires, about Patty, but I will do that on March 7th. However, we do naturally wish Patty the absolute best and thank her for the remarkable work she's done for many, many years in Sayreville. Numbers 9 through 10, as well as 19 through 20, as we naturally do, we're asking you to approve and appoint new certificated as well as non-certificated staff for the 2017-18 school year. Numbers 19 and 20 can be found on the addendum. Number 14, which can be found on page 13, we're approaching our Sayreville Special Olympics Unified Sports Spring Basketball season. As you might know, a couple of weeks ago we had our first ever Project Before Unified Sports program for our preschoolers. Well, now we're entering the spring season, and that is basketball season. They'll be having their March Madness tournament on March 28th. I believe, Mr. Nasser, that's at the high school?
Correct.
Beginning at 2:30, so if you're in the area, come on out. It's an incredible time. And numbers 25 and 26, I believe Dr. Shediak mentioned this earlier. For the first time ever here, we're asking you to approve Algebra 1 middle and high school Title I Park tutoring programs for this year. You can find that on the agenda. Any questions on anything on personnel?
No questions, just a comment on the upcoming Unified Sports season. If you haven't been there, please try to get a chance to attend. I invited some people on the board to come out to the Unified Sports season. I know Tom, a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about the issue of bullying, I think more than anything, this teaches our kids empathy, dealing with differences and recognizing differences, and it's one of the really great programs I think we have going on in our schools right now. There are many great programs, but it's really a heartwarming one to see, and I think it really, really improves the culture of all our kids in the schools. So if you get a chance to get to one, we do them at all the schools, so if you get a chance to get to one of them, it's an excellent event. My kids will be involved, and it's a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Any comments on the superintendent's report? Okay, hearing none, I'll open up to the public on agenda items only. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
it's Eileen Pabon. I'm at 155 Norton Street in Sayreville. I would like to ask the superintendent, as well as the board, to think twice about eliminating the Parent Involvement Council and representative. As I sat here before, I even read that we were going to eliminate it. I looked and said, wow, all these people complaining, worry about the kids, and we have nobody sitting in that seat representing our children and our parents. So before you totally eliminate it, I think just in this room, there's a couple of parents who may be willing to get involved, and I certainly would spearhead any effort, a big effort to rectify, get this thing, what do you call it, resurrected? Resurrected, so that we do not have to eliminate the Parent Involvement Committee because we don't have parents that are going to be involved and committed. So if you could just give me a chance to get people together and rally support, and not just for the next meeting, but for years to come. My daughter's graduating 8th grade. I still have 4 more years in the education system here. I think it's a great school. I like Dr. Labby. I'm very happy that you're the president. I've met you all before when I complained about the lunch program. I've met you through the Girl Scouts. So I think that I can be motivating enough to get some parents together and keep this going so we can actually show up and represent the children that need our representation. So I just hope that even if you give me two more meetings, I can come through.
And I think, first of all, what we're trying to do with this, we're eliminating the council as well as the representative. We've tried this several different formats. We tried it initially just as an open forum for parents to come and voice any concerns, and we really weren't getting any parents. So then we said, okay, well, maybe we need to offer more than just an opportunity to voice concerns. Maybe we need to offer programming that's of interest. So we've had forums, on grading policy when we implemented it. We've had different programs for students, college preparation, etc. They weren't coming for that either. Even though we advertised it, we marketed it, and the parents just weren't coming. Now, what we found some success with is, rather than having a district-wide parent involvement council, and we've done this now on a couple of issues. For example, there was concern at the UES when we implemented the standards-based report card. Dr. Shediak went there and we held a specific meeting at that school on that specific issue, and parents came out. In addition to that, we not only held the meeting, we taped the meeting, and then we showed it off the board website, so parents who couldn't make it could then view the presentation. So we're trying to get parent involvement just using a different methodology versus then having one district-wide meeting, because it just has not been successful for us.
I know. I, at one point, did attend as a person. So when I looked at the sign, I'm like, wow, I go, it kind of, I'm not going to, it's embarrassing, but I too let it get away from me. But to know that we would not have that anymore, and trust me, I'm on Facebook, Sayreville Community, all those Sayreville pages, with all the amount of complaining that's done, okay? We should have representation here. So maybe we just, I'm not saying I'm a miracle worker, but I certainly will give it a big push. And I will be one of the people in the front to say, hey, I'm looking behind me. I know there's other people back there who are very civic-minded that may want to help me, or at least be cheerleaders. So if you could just give me a chance, I certainly want to try before we disband it, because that's kind of embarrassing that we would not have that representation here. So if you could give me a chance, I'm a motivating person. I think I could gather some support if I pay attention to it and get people to be aware of it. I think, I think I met the other lady. Remember I was the parent? Yeah. I was with you one time. So I could do it again, and I think I could get people to, I think I could get people to be motivated. So if you just give me a shot at it, won't cost you any money. It'll just cost you another change the resolution and.
Look, we can always table the policy and bring it back. It's had 2 meetings, you had 3, 4, it's fine.
Yeah, so that's why I stayed, because I
I'll
read
give it to
that.
the board, but thank you.
But, so if you can, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And, yes, sir.
Fred Block, 25 Horizon Road. I'll try to keep this brief. I know you guys know that I tend to be a very quiet man and I don't speak often.
But today I
When you
actually
speak,
took-
it's with authority.
I actually took a lot of notes today. So when I was staring at my phone, I don't want anybody to think that I'm ignoring you. I'm actually taking notes. The homework situation, oh my gosh, that's a huge deal. And what I want to touch on, and I know I've spoken about this in the past, is I have a senior going out this year, and I have a soon-to-be freshman who's coming in this year. So my senior typically was spending, and I know you and I have spoken about this, Dr. Ladner, was spending pretty much between 3 to 4 hours a day doing homework. Now, why? She got a little bit of my OCD. Good for her, bad for her. Because, people with OCD, they can't just rush through something. Everything is extremely problematic and requires a great deal of thinking. So while she's a straight A student, and by the way, we're very proud of her. She is in the top 6% of her class. She's got a 4.12 GPA. She qualifies for NJ Stars. We're very proud of her. I try to tell my daughter that if anything you take away from all of that extra time that you put into doing your homework and learning and getting good grades, not having any college debt for your first 2 years should be the first one you take away. Because people pay off college debt for many, many years. So that's a huge accomplishment. But I'm just hoping, of course I'm hoping that for my younger daughter, who's going to be coming in some way, she gets to see that homework disappear sometime within her 4 years at the high school. I'd be very excited. So will she, and so will my wife, I can assure you. Dan, you mentioned the plague and cleaning up and tearing down everything, and it kind of reminded me of something. So the middle school does their musical in the high school also. And I know that in the past, they used to do a show on Friday, a show on Saturday, and a show on Sunday. And for whatever reason, we now do a Friday night show and then 2 shows back to back on Saturday. And it was a mad scramble to, after the second show, for all the parents and volunteers and people who are working, to clear everything out because we weren't allowed to have access to the building on Sunday. So I don't know if that's related to this or not. I think it would be nice if we can open up some dialogue so, we're not in the building until 11 o'clock with everybody already tired from what's obviously a very long day. If we can find a way around that. And look, I might be speaking for myself, just thoughts that I have, not on behalf of anybody else. Another thing I noticed is that we had to move things from the middle school to the high school. Sets that were created and everything, and we were using private vehicles and again volunteer man hours, which is fine. But why do we have to use pickup trucks and stuff when we know that we have a box truck with a lift gate on the back of it, which would probably be a lot easier to do one big load in, move it down to the high school, and one big load out, and then again later on. Now I know with every one of these requests comes some finite amount of cost, but I think it would be better if we already have volunteers and people who are willing to do the work, the labor, that we provide them with the right resources to be able to make this stuff get moved safely for everyone. And of course, you also don't want anything to happen to a major set piece, the day before the show actually goes up. So I'd like to see if there's anything we can talk about doing with that. Again, just my thoughts, not trying to, speak on behalf of anybody else. Dr. Lapp, you mentioned a really good point about the homework topic that I don't want to shy away from. And is it meaningful, and how much are kids really getting? And I got to be honest with you, homework sucks. For the kids, for the parents, it's stressful, especially on weekends. You want to have quality time. You want your kids to be able to disconnect, just like we want to disconnect from work, and we're stuck here late at night. But I find that you're actually, in many cases, forcing your kids, hey, have you done your homework? No, they procrastinate. Have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? And finally, they're like, all right, I'll do my homework, get off my back.
And they resist, and with that kind of mental attitude, I really feel like they're not getting anything out of it. They're just trying to rush through it, get it done as quickly as possible. So I really do believe that maybe it doesn't have to be killed, though I like it, that there's less to gain. I do agree with you, that there's less to gain from a homework perspective. I told you, I'm trying to keep this quick. Technology, really good budget presentation. I like everything you broke down. I had a jaw-dropping moment a couple times, but I do work in technology and telecom. It has been my passion and my career, which I've been doing for over 20 years now. And I can relate to a lot of the challenges that you have to face, obviously, in a school with restricted budget and obviously having to deliver quality experience for the kids. I had a couple questions that I was hoping we could address, and I'm hoping quickly. The Wi-Fi and the switches, I think my first question is, what types of challenges are you facing in the school today that is driving you to, the switches I can almost understand, but the Wi-Fi piece, what type of challenge do you feel that you're facing today that is pushing you towards replacement?
The original Wi-Fi system was put in 2011, and since then we've vastly increased the amount of devices we have in the district. So one component that we're facing is just the capacity for our wireless connectivity back to the network. There are bottlenecks in certain parts of the building, dead spots in certain parts of the building. But also those devices like the switches will also come end of life in 2021. While not as critical as the switches, obviously if a switch goes down, we can't replace it immediately. We could have outages to huge parts of the building where the access points, we may have outage to just a room, something of that nature. And even in the immediate, it would probably fail over to the nearby room. But then we're continuing to incur more bottlenecks and less areas of coverage. Ultimately, we can start replacing certain switches here and there, but overall, keep everything in line, keep it compatible, and to keep it in support with our wireless controller as well. It made sense to look at it for replacement as well. So capacity and continued support would be the biggest areas.
And the Wi-Fi system that we're looking to purchase?
I'm hesitant to mention a specific product or name because that's out for bid right now, but we were looking to move towards a cloud-based solution so that updates and management are all handled through that method instead of our current on-site on-prem systems that we're using currently.
When you're going out to bid for these, I know you're hesitant to mention the name, but when you're going out to bid, are all of the items that you're going out to bid with equal? Meaning, if one company comes in with a lower bid but doesn't give you that cloud managed control system, is that something that could potentially win if it doesn't fulfill the requirement?
It could. We're bidding under the E-rate criteria right now, which ultimately means that there's a scoring matrix that we rate the incoming bids against. So it is possible that something that doesn't meet the specific criteria that we put forward could potentially win the bid based on the criteria. But certainly we are looking at, and one of the major components of our criteria was to have the cloud managed support. Given the number of staff that we have in the technology department, the number of access points and systems that we have to manage, being able to facilitate fast and expedient management updates to the wireless system was a huge benefit to us in looking at a new replacement.
I concur with you, especially being in the position that you are in constantly and having moved my company also to a cloud managed control-based system. I would wonder if there's a stipulation that would allow you to bypass the normal bidding process if the system will not adhere to the requirements for you to be able to work with now and moving forward. If you're going to have to keep additional staff to manage a system that is less manageable or harder for you to manage, I think the money ends up, balancing out. I was just wondering, I would imagine there has to be a way for you to kind of accomplish your goals without going with the most expensive system. And I guess we can talk about that offline if that's possible. I'm also curious because I just came back from a conference about this, and it's also something that always sits in my head. So I understand after speaking with Mike, who was really helpful back there, that we just got a new set of firewalls, or a new firewall. Unfortunately, it's not a set or an HA pair.
No, I would love that, but that was not.
Yeah, so one firewall, which scares me because I'm a redundancy kind of guy. Are we doing anything as far as cybersecurity initiatives? Now, I'm asking that because A, it's scary, and B, it's extremely time consuming and requires a lot of attention. And I know that there are a lot of firms, including Juniper and Cisco these days, who are offering these types of cybersecurity offerings that will allow you to catch more of these things, analyze, true alerts or false positives, but some human has to look at that stuff and still make heads or tails of it. Is that something that we're looking at doing?
And that is in part what I was talking about with SAC before during the presentation. We did evaluate the possibility of bringing on managed services to monitor our security on the network side as well as our service uptime. Both those were budgeted items this year that currently we're not able to fund as the budget stands right now. They are things we're going to continue to look at in future budgets. I would agree with you, they're important. Having someone have eyes on our network security at all times is a value asset to the district. However, with the new firewall and the other security suites that are in place now, there's a lot more automation that's going on. And again, it does need to be seen by a person to evaluate the credible threats versus the false alarms. Fortunately, we have a solid team in-house that is doing that between Mike and between our engineers. It is not something that we can handle 24/7, 365 with the staff that we have on site, which is why we were looking at managed services, but we are leveraging the tools at our disposal now to mitigate as many threats as possible.
I mean, in your defense, a true attention to cybersecurity would require like dozens of people and many man hours to analyze all of the threats. So that's why a lot of the times the managed services help. And now I think I understand where that $40,000 to $80,000 figure came from. Because when we were talking about monitoring, like, standard uptime, that kind of thing, I'm like, that can't be that much.
No, we looked at it from two perspectives, and one was the security aspect. The other was critical systems to make sure that, A, that they were up and online at all times, as well as patch management, things of that nature.
If again, offline, I'd like to volunteer if you're interested. I think that there's probably some creative ways that we can potentially get critical systems monitored for a pretty decent rate. That's very, very, worth looking into, which would hopefully give you a little bit more insight and proactive alerting systems without breaking too much of a budget. And I think it would help all of your team. I'm sure you guys would all love that.
Absolutely. And any avenues that can help in that capacity, we'd be happy to do.
We like financial creativity.
Absolutely.
There's not many things that I
As
can
long
do.
as Ms. Hill isn't doing it.
There's not many things I do other than talk a lot and try to help. I am offering myself out, obviously, to be help, not a hindrance. So if you feel I would be, I'm not insulted by you saying thank you, but no thank you.
Happy to look at any avenues that there are.
Last, and I promise this is it. You mentioned something about the older Chromebooks. This kind of bothers me a little bit. They're not workhorses by any means, and I know that an Atom processor or whatever they're using or Celeron is not going to get you a lot of distance. If they're already that old, my biggest question is there a possibility that these devices are hindering a child or a student's capability to work effectively without delaying a process? Like, is it taking them 3 times longer because the system goes unresponsive, it's buggy, it's just not up to today's standards? Because if that's the case, I don't see how keeping them helps.
We haven't seen that as much with the Chromebooks as we have with some of our other systems. There were certainly iPads and Windows-based PCs around the district that definitely experienced those problems. We've targeted a lot of those for replacement over the year as far as the Windows-based systems, where we've either replaced existing systems with virtual desktops, with solid-state hard drives, memory upgrades, things to keep those systems trucking along. The iPads are on target for beginning replacement next year. A lot of our iPads are iPad 2s Not only are they less responsive, but they have not been for some time now. I take the most recent update from Apple. So those are the next particular area that we're targeting as part of that pre-K one-to-one. They have tablet devices. You may or may not explore Apple as the vendor for there. Android is another possible option to go down, but a lot of the special services apps are still Apple only, so that's something we have to consider as well. But the Chromebooks, although the Samsungs are an older generation, they are 2 gig models, Celeron, we haven't really seen a drawdown in performance on those that we have some of the other devices, at least not yet.
Okay, great. And I'll close by saying that I appreciate everything that the board does for our children, for our district. I know it's a difficult job. I know that all of you every day have to make tough decisions that are going to affect somebody positively or negatively in some way, shape, or form. And you also have to deal with blowback on some of those decisions. I just want you to know that there are many of us who do appreciate everything that you guys do for our kids, and I thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Renee Quackenbush, 87 Harding Avenue. The next primary election day is June 5th, and I know some of our schools are polling locations. And with all the concerns about security, perhaps now is the time to revisit getting some of those polling locations out of our schools. So I don't know if that's been covered recently, but just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I think the only school that is a polling location is the Sayreville School.
Oh, okay.
And we do have an officer that's there. Yes, when we have our preschoolers.
Dr. Ladd, I don't think that one is right.
No?
No.
Truman has been a polling location. My kids have been out of it for several years.
High school might not be anymore. Arlen? Eisenhower?
So just might want to get ahead of it, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'll reach out to Chief Zabrowski to see what we can do with that.
And then technology, and I don't know if you've ever explored this, but I mean, we have Chromebooks at home, and I know bring your own device policy would be maybe difficult to manage, but maybe it's something worth exploring if there is a certain percentage of the parents here in Sayreville that the kids already have the Chromebooks at home, that they could bring them to school and use them rather than, and that helps you get to that 1-to-1 ratio much quicker.
The board has actually had a bring your own device policy in place for a number of years now. Different principals and teachers have implemented it in different ways. It's much more prevalent at the high school level than it is at the other grade levels. A lot of that has to do with accountability of the devices. Students bring them back and forth, bring them on the bus, not having lockers to store them in. There are a number of teachers that run courses and programs within their individual classes that do depend on bringing your own devices. Our goal with moving towards that 1-to-1 device count as we go forward into the next decade is to really bring that equal device, equal compatibility for every student in the district. Some may have devices at home, some may not. Different types of devices, different compatibilities. So slowly but surely, bringing it so that the district can provide those devices to all students equally within the classroom is the goal. But in the meantime, we definitely have leverage for bringing your own devices to grade levels in classrooms. And I know different principals and supervisors have explored different ways to use it.
Just trying to help you out. Creative financing.
And that's really how the board initially approached devices in the classroom, was to use bring your own device to leverage that. We were able to get one thing device.
And then on the topic of homework, not necessarily homework, but summer packets, if you could look at that also and the effectiveness, because I am not a fan of the summer packets.
No.
I'm the fan of real learning, like go to the grocery store, okay, here's your money, count your change, and real life stuff. Thank you, and thank you for all the work you do for the children.
Thank you. Anyone else for public on agenda items only? Okay, hearing none, we will close public and we're back to the board. Do we want to do anything regarding the Parent Involvement Council? Yeah.
Can I make a motion that we table it for now?
Table the bylaw and repeal and the policy repeal.
Table the repeal and, discuss it further.
I have a motion, do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Rubio. Any comments on the repeal of, on the tabling of the repeal of 1600.1 and bylaw 9141? Hearing none, all in favor of tabling the repeal? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion's carried. All right, so those items will be tabled and they remain part of our policy. And Mrs. Pavone, you're on. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the remainder of the superintendent's report?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, I have a second by Mr. Bishada. Any comments on the superintendent's report? Hearing none, roll call to approve the superintendent's report.
Mr. Falco?
Yes.
Mrs. Backo?
Yes.
Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Delegates to the New Jersey School Board Association, just a couple of quick items. There's going to be a meeting at Rutgers University where the officers of NJSBA and the officers of NJEA are meeting with the governor. And in addition to that, the president of NEA will also be there. So NJSBA also wants their national president there. So that'll be on March 6th. We'll have a meeting with Governor Murphy. March 7th is the County Student Recognition Dinner, where 2 students from Sayreville will be honored, as well as 2 students from every school in the county. It's the Unsung Heroes Dinner. The keynote speakers will be Greg and Cindy Tafaro, who lost their daughter to cancer and has since started a foundation in her honor, the Marissa Tafaro Foundation. So they will be the keynote speakers for that event as we recognize the students. Just one other highlight from my trip to South Carolina. I mentioned the one school that I visited. The other elementary school that I visited has an immersion language program. So I got a chance to experience a class of English language learners learning mathematics in Spanish at the elementary level. By the time they get to 5th grade, there's actually an advanced program there where they can graduate 5th grade, not only speaking English, but also speaking Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. So it gives you an idea of the type of possibilities that are out there. They did express challenges in terms of getting the necessary support in terms of qualified teachers to be able to exact that trifecta. Finding a teacher who is both an educator as well as fluent in English, Mandarin, and Spanish is very difficult. So in some cases, they use combinations of educators in order to accomplish that piece. Moving on to special committee. Actually, we'll hit the budget piece up first. So we each have copies now of the line item detail budget. We'll take first the section 300 budget, which begins with charter school tuition on page 1. And we'll just basically follow the same process. I know you've all had this, so you've had a chance to review it. So I'm going to go through quickly, but if you have any questions or items that you want to discuss in detail, please indicate them and we'll pause for discussion for questions.
Can I just make an adjustment?
Absolutely.
Page 10 of that report, there's an item that was supposed to be a reduction, and it's in there as a positive instead of a negative. So it's an admin cut under the 11.02.61.420.62, about halfway down to that line account under Wilson School faculty room replacement carpet. So that should just be a negative. It should be a negative 22,000, not a positive.
Got it. So does that mean that we have an extra $22,000 that we can allocate someplace else?
Essentially, yes. It's something that Dr. Lobby and I discussed. There was the wrestling match and Ms. Candy had brought up. There's also some revenue adjustments that I had to make, so it's not quite all there. But
Well, it's actually 44,000.
it is
The other
44,000.
direction.
Yeah.
Okay. Just give me time just to There you go. There you go. All right, so any questions on page 1 with regard to the charter school tuition? Mr. Bishop.
I've had an issue with this for years. Item number 2 on that chart there. I don't know why, as a charter school, we send children to a religious school. Foreign language taught is Hebrew. I have nothing against the nationality or whatever. But again, it should be the same thing for all religious schools if we're going to do that. I would ask you for check with Governor Murphy about the legitimate issue here of a charter school that's a religious school.
Okay, I can raise the issue.
While I will agree with you on that, it's technically not. Their language of choice is Hebrew, English versus Spanish. That's under the guise of being a charter school, not a religious school. I mean, they've done all the due diligence, the paperwork, it's legitimate. While I agree with what you're saying, I know what they're doing, but it's really, really difficult to prove. They tried. I mean, East Brunswick's a blue ribbon school system. Why would they do charters? Right. And they don't want it.
Again, I'd like Governor Murphy to look into something like this. Because what happened is we have parochial schools that could be in the same boat as this, that are shutting down. Correct. I mean, and that, what happens in a case like that, when they shut down, they become into our school system, causing an increase in enrollment and.
Okay. All right, moving on, page 2 and 3. Any questions on 2 and 3? 4 and 5? Six and 7? Eight and 9? Ten and 11? 12 and 13? 14 and 15? And I'll just take 16 to 20 since everybody seems to be pretty quiet. And for the benefit of the public, our finance committee has also already dug into this in detail as well. And the board's had a copy of it. Okay. How about pages 1 to 5 of the 700 series, which begins with other objects? Okay. And then on the agenda, it indicates the 400 series as well and the 500.
That's within that first report, that was 300, 400.
It's all part of that section. Beautiful.
And this one is the 700 and 800.
Got it. Okay, very good. All right, any other questions on the budget sections that we want to discuss?
Question.
Yes, Mr. Machado.
This first section that we went through, one of the issues that I brought up many years ago was pay clubs. I don't know if without Rob in or not, but East Brunswick has it. It's not going to put a lot of money, but at least it'll pay for some of the coaching staff that we have and some of the participants that do other activities. You know, I'm just wondering if the board open to funding some other activities with that money that we can generate, or putting that money into the coaching or the extracurricular activities that we're paying.
Right, now, I know the Finance Committee had this discussion, and I don't know if Mr. Esposito or Ms. Hill could provide some information. We talked about exactly how much money this would generate for us if we went in that direction.
We didn't come up with a number, right?
I don't know if I was at that.
We didn't come up with a concrete number. right? Or maybe I'm.
I thought we talked about an estimate of what that we thought that could generate.
Right, most districts do like a $50 charge per sport. So, I mean, we have about close to 1,000 kids that participate in, and that's, well, actually, probably not 1,000 kids, but we probably have about 600 kids that participate in sports. Some of them participate in more than one. So the question would be, every sport you participate in, you have to pay the fee. And the average fee around New Jersey, it has a pay per play, it's about $50. So you're talking anywhere between $50,000 to $75,000.
But now you have to reduce the free and reduced lunch.
And once you take that out, I mean, you could be down at $50,000.
And then you also have to go include clubs, any extracurricular activity, because you couldn't, so if you're in a theater group, if you're in a Spanish club, $50.
I would think so, yeah.
But you don't pay for a Spanish club, that's.
You can, I don't think by law you can tax one and not tax another. We can look into that, but I don't think you can.
Spanish club, so like, we don't have a cost for that, so why would we charge them?
We do, don't we have a stipend?
Yeah.
With that?
Not for all of
For band,
I agree with.
I think
like
the
the
Spanish,
for
for
example,
example, you do it for clubs where there's a.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
So the reason I bring that up is like with band, I really didn't look real close right now. But I know years ago, we were allotting like $5,000 for band equipment, you know, like instruments, replacements, et cetera. And maybe that money that's generated by the band participating in something like this, they can buy the equipment and upgrade their equipment each year by the monies that come in.
It's interesting you said that, because at the band banquet Friday, I spoke to several people, and Mr. Blocky, is he there? You can
Here.
correct me if I'm wrong, I think they already pay a fee to be in the band, is that correct?
Yes, they do.
So they already do that to offset some of the costs, because their equipment's falling apart. And you're right, they do need cash, so they're already implemented, self-imposed. I guess.
Right,
That's a voluntary.
Can I also add one thing to that I think is important you guys know? I know it's not public speaking. I know that one thing that the Band Parents Association was able to do this year to secure 2 new instruments for the band purely on funds that were raised from programs that they run and fundraisers, a new marimba and a soprano saxophone. I'm pretty sure it's around $10,000, which is really nice that they're able to do that, but we need a lot more attention. So, if ever there's a possibility to try to squeeze a little bit more towards the band, even occasionally, it would be a great help. Thanks.
And I'm also wondering if we go with pay to play, how motivated the parents groups are gonna be to keep raising money. Now we're charging you, and then we're also asking you to, get out there and raise more money. So I'm wondering if that would, be a deterrent.
You know what, from my experience, the money that they fundraise for is the T-shirts and at the banquets, they get this great, sweatsuits and gifts. That's really what it's there for. This money, I believe, and the board can decide this, would go to offset the referee costs and anything like that. It wouldn't go towards the students, and maybe equipment, for that particular sport. But it's, I don't know if it would deter, it might, but that stuff is really for more apparel and stuff like that.
Dr. Levy, do you know if the other districts, when they charge them $50, is that across, includes the co-curricular, not just sports?
Yeah.
So it would be like a fee, so the band would be included in
Yes.
that type of thing?
Yeah.
So the number of students you quoted for, that's just for sports, or is that included?
I think in total, it's close to around 600 to 700 kids. But then, Ms. Hill just noted that you have about 39% kids that are free and reduced right now. So you're close to half of those kids you couldn't charge, or you'd have to charge them a reduced rate. So I think a conservative number that we would probably be able to generate is something around $50,000 if you went with $50 per student per activity.
That's the same number we can do.
Yeah. If we did consider it, would it be any closer to doing what we talked about earlier this year, adding some sports. I know we kind of went away from that because of the budget numbers we all saw. But I also know that, I don't know if we ever notified that, the hockey mom or not.
Well, that is something that's on that, a while ago, we talked about a priority list. And that is it's something on the priority list, because that is a group that has been asking for quite some time now. I believe the cost was somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000. So that is something that we're looking very closely into, trying to see if, we can find the funds for that, as well as some of the other items on that priority list.
What are the board's thoughts? Pursue it. I mean, does the board want to pursue it? Sure, John, just offer my comment before we vote. I'm not a fan. First of all, I don't think we're there yet in terms of needing to do it. But just my view of public education is you offer a total educational program as part of the school district. And I guess I kind of struggle because as a board, we subsidize for students to take the AP exam, and we pay for the AP exam, but yet we're talking about pay to play for sports. And sports aren't just sports. I mean, in many cases, students who participate in sports clubs, activities, etc., do better in season because they're focused, they do better academically in season because they're focused, they're disciplined, etc. And in many cases, those types of activities actually save kids. And I'm struggling with the whole pay-to-play concept in a public education environment. It's more of a philosophical piece for me. But let's take a vote for it.
Well, what are we voting for? Are we voting to implement it or voting to discuss it? I mean, to look into it further?
I think we have to
That's
look
what I'm
into it
saying.
further,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think people are looking into it, but I looked at it, but I'm not ready yet to take that step. But if we're going to, something that we're going to research that benefits that maybe, I'm not aware of, how would give us the ability to add more, programs without hurting somebody.
Basically, what I think we'd be asking is for our administration to come back to us with a proposal for pay to play in terms of how it would look, the estimated revenue, charges, prices, etc.
I don't think it would hurt to look into it, but I also know that, we talk about the reduced rates for being reduced, but there's an awful lot of middle of the road folks in this town. And paying the fee that they already pay for fundraising and everything else is stretching their budget a bit. So I have concerns about how it, in reality, it would work out.
And look, the only thing I would say is, again, if you want to look into it, that's fine. If you don't plan on supporting it, let's not have the administration take the time to look into it and prepare a report. If you're seriously open-minded about it, then by all means vote to look into it.
I think we should look into it. I mean, it doesn't hurt. Okay, I don't think it's that intense a project, and I just don't think it's that much money to play a sport. Just my personal opinion. I mean, listen, the bubble's going to burst at some point. And we have to just put stopgaps in, and that might be something that we may not be. I don't think it hurts.
Before I take a vote, so I'll take comments. Before I take a vote, I'll open the public as well, since this is a major issue. Any other board member comments on this?
I just wanted to go with what Anthony is saying. East Brunswick, I use that as my example. They have no problem with their academics there. You're saying about a well-rounded program. I don't know how many of their students participate in extracurricular activities or sports, but they have one of the top academic programs in the county. Let's be realistic about that. For years, we've cut corners, like the money that could be generated, I was saying, put back into the programs, or we have an issue with security, that, there's issues that we have to bring up that are going to have to be implemented in the very near future. So maybe that money collected this year could go, if it's implemented, if we do, it could go for the security issues that we want to implement, whatever the security committee comes up with. It's just something that, like, we've been squeezing that buffalo for so long and that nickel that, there's nothing left. And, we've got to, I know it's a hard alternative, but we've got to look at different ways. And I think this possibly
even if we just take the money and put it back into each program, like the band, put the money back, whatever, collected into the band, take the money that's collected for football, break it down, put it in there, but it's still something that we have money that we can take out of that program and put it into something that will benefit us all.
Can we do that? Can the money go right back in each program, or would the money have to be split evenly? Meaning issues with Title IX?
So the way I would have to record it as a revenue, so I would budget it as a revenue item and budget a corresponding expenditure, if that's what we want to do. So it can't be done as a refund, whatever's being done, because that's just slightly different.
Right.
So the revenue would come in and it would go right to the general fund.
Correct.
Right, so the board can budget the expense and
That's what I'm saying.
it might not be, spelled out, but the board can make.
Well, what I was saying, some questions legally, I know fundraising wise and other ways wise, just because one sport's bigger, if a male team has more sports than a female team, you have to split those evenly regardless of the number. So, you can think and look into it. I'm not saying I have to.
If you go that route, football and band, they're going to get more money than golf.
But it reduces our exposure, okay? It allows us to put money that we normally put towards something else. We don't have to take that money per se and say we're gonna use it for security, but we'll have money freed up for security because we reduced the expense on the athletic side.
Right, so essentially it would be an additional revenue item.
That's
What
all.
you do on the expenditure
Yeah,
side
exactly.
is different, you can have that in mind, but it is different.
Any of the board member comments before I open to the public? Opening to the public on pay to play. Come up to the microphone and state your name and address. How did I know this was coming?
Eileen Pabon again, 155 North Street. Hopefully there's no weirdo in this room that's coming to my house later. But Southampton, New Jersey, I'm really in Sayreville. I think that you definitely will get a good response from parents for a $50 fee. Make no doubt, in this town, baseball, travel softball, cheerleading, we got it all going on. And everybody's paying a pretty buck to keep their kids dancing, gymnastics, all this stuff. So I don't think that for your child, for me personally, to spend $50 for my daughter to participate in softball, whatever of the sports you wanted to do, that would not be a budget breaker for me. And it would free money up for the board to spend on different things.
Thank you.
Fred Block, Ivy Road. You have to touch on the band. I was, and you guys also know that I'm passionate when it comes to the band. Rather than duck down, I'll just hold this up. So I wasn't ready for this. A few thoughts that I had. If you're going to do something like this, it's just going to encompass all the different recreations. I would hope that you guys are going to reach out to each different team or sport or group to try to get some feedback on how that may or may not affect their current program or how they operate. I'm worried about the pool effect, where what happens with the funds and how they get distributed and why and who has say over who gets what and how much and why. Are we making more red tape? Because I can tell you this year for the band, I have 2 kids that participated. They did $50 for the first kid and $40 for the second kid. And then to try to get some more help from the parents, they did a work bond. To try to get people to come out and help us with all of our fundraising, the car washes, the clothing collection, on our Night of 1,000 Stars, which is extremely successful and our biggest fundraiser. Unfortunately, as the band, we don't get to have 8 or so games here at home where the door money comes to us. We don't get that. So, and with the cost, and I use this all the time, with the cost of a single sousaphone, I get lambasted for calling it a tuba. The single cost of a sousaphone being in the range of $40,000. It takes a long time for us to be able to try to come up with money and be able to get one, and we buy them on eBay, and they're plastic. And we're the only band to this day that goes to competition in open class, which is a very high challenging level that has plastic sousaphones. So anyway, I would just hope that there's going to be a lot of discussion and feedback from everyone involved on the idea of this and how it's going to, how funds will be distributed if we're going to move forward with the idea. And then the second follow-up question that I have is, how will this affect all of the parent associations for each of these extracurricular activities? Will they still be able to do these fundraisers to raise additional funds? And because now they won't be able to charge for the students to participate. The school is going to be charging for the student to participate.
But I think, and I could be wrong, I think band is the only extracurricular activity that charges a quote unquote or has a pay-to-play policy. I think, and I can't imagine that it would impede on any fundraising. I just can't. Why would it? Again, I think the money for most sports, like for soccer and basketball, that goes for all the banquets and the apparel that they get for playing that year.
No, I'm guessing, what I'm saying is, I'm asking if we do implement a pay-to-play, would that stop anybody from being able to run the additional fundraisers with, restaurants or car washes, because I don't, if we're gonna do that and then stop the other side, we're gonna come up really short every year.
Well, I know that the other towns that do have a pay-to-play policy, they fundraise.
Yeah, I see the two as being separate. Whatever your organization wants to do to raise additional funds, whether it be a thing at Texas Roadhouse or whatever, would be fine.
Yeah, that's what they do in Jackson. They do both.
Okay, thank you.
Quackenbush, Harding Avenue. So it isn't just sports. In middle school, to participate in the play, last year, I believe it was $75. And it covers costumes and things like that. This year in the high school, my daughter's a freshman, and there was no cost to participate, but the children, they were not required, but highly encouraged to get $100 in ads sold for the program, again, to cover the costs. I don't have time to go sell ads for my daughter. I'm not gonna have her go door to door, so I just write the check for $100. So parents are paying nonetheless. I am in agreement with what Mr. Sayak had said. I would hate to think that my family is of means, we can pay for this, but there are plenty of people in this town that don't fall underneath the situation where they wouldn't have to pay, and they are middle of the road. And I would hate to see any child not being able to participate and have that opportunity. Those are the opportunities that shape the children. And especially, you mentioned Title IX. I am a product, college educated because of Title IX, thanks to sports. So let us not just brush that over. And yes, there has to be equal opportunity for all the students, clubs, sports, all of that. And if we're gonna add one sport, well then what's on the other side, another club to give other opportunities for others.
Thank you. Anyone else on pay-to-play? Okay, does the board wish?
One more comment. Because I think we're all kind of the same page, it's kind of worth exploring, but I don't know, whatever that number comes out to be, like I said, $50 doesn't seem like especially anyone whose kids are playing sports in town now, know how much it costs. But one of the main reasons we merged the football teams in this town is because we couldn't get enough of younger kids playing, and it was kind of scratching my head for a long time, going, why don't we have kids here, but there's 40 kids going out for a professional football team? They're the same kids they've been, and it was money. It was a money issue, so it is a barrier. So if we do decide, I think we have to also make sure what that number is. That would keep some kids away from our programs that we don't want to lose. Now, I'm not saying that that's a reason not to do it. I'm just saying we have to keep cognizant of what those numbers are for different families and different situations.
Good point, but John, football's like 400, 450.
Oh, yeah, when everything's in, when the fundraising and all the things that go with it are in. So yeah, it's a big difference. Now, like I started, it's not $50, but at the same we have to remain cognizant of it.
Sure. Absolutely.
I just want to caution about confusing the two. Kids that are doing all these travel teams, that's a whole different level.
a whole different level of commitment from the kids, the parents, and it's a completely different experience participating on a middle school, a high school level. And there's so many valuable things to be learned by that. So don't just assume that those kids that are coming out for the Little League are the same kids that are going to play high school. Like, it's two separate things. It's two separate things. You've got kids that want to participate here in school, and that's their only chance. Maybe they don't have two parents at home.
Right.
Maybe there isn't a parent that even has a car to get them to extracurricular stuff. So their chance to do something and learn some of those values you learn in the clubs, on the field, in the theater, in the band, this is their only chance. So just don't confuse the two.
All right, any other board discussion? All right, do we want to direct the administration to explore pay to play and bring back a recommendation to the board? Mrs. Rubio?
I don't think it would hurt, yes.
Mr. Machado?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
No.
Mr. Balfour?
Yes.
I'm a no. Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, very, to explore.
Mrs. Backup?
Just to make a comment, I think it's a good idea to explore it because we talk about it every year and we're always in this position where we don't know. So even if we don't do it this year, at least we'll have some data if it comes back to the table next year and we feel we're in a more dire position where we have to implement it. So I don't think it could hurt because we're always throwing away numbers, maybe this, maybe that, but we don't ever really know. So I think it's a good idea to get a concrete number. Maybe we'll just get a number and dismiss it and we won't have to talk about it again next year. I think it'll just put it to rest.
So you're a yes?
Yeah.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes, just to look at it, yes.
It sounds like a yes, Ms. Hill? Okay. We will explore pay to play. Anything else on budget?
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, it's one. I'd like to discuss just from a logic perspective, and I think it's a good thing for the public to understand. If Ms. Hill can explain the waiver process and how we're going over the 2% cap and how that works in between the healthcare numbers and how we're allowed to go over that number.
Sure, I kind of was expecting to do this at our final budget meeting, but I can do that now, if everybody would like. The way the state works with our tax levy, we have two opportunities for an adjustment. In reality, everybody gets a 2% tax levy increase that you're allowed to go without having to go out for a vote. But in addition to that, if your enrollment has gone up certain percentages over a number of years, you're eligible for an enrollment adjustment there. And you're also eligible for a health benefits waiver, which is if the state health benefits plan goes over 2% of it, to a 2% increase, the districts are also allowed to take whatever that percentage is. So this past year, the state health benefits went up 13%. So we're already allowed the 2%, but in addition to that, we're allowed another 11% if we can justify it. We don't have the numbers to justify 11%. As of my last calculation, I think we were at a total of maybe 6% over everything, which would be 4% on the health benefits number. It brought our overall to about 2.85%. We're also now eligible for an enrollment adjustment, which we've never been eligible for before because our enrollment has increased drastically over the last few years. So I had to back out our vision and our dental are not part of the health benefits. So as of right now, our health benefits eligibility waiver is $431,000, and our enrollment adjustment is $332,000.
And do you have both of those in the budget?
Well, one of the things that Dr. Lavey and I had discussed was effective school solutions. So at this moment, that the items that we just reviewed, it was cut. But if we take that enrollment adjustment, we would be able to put that back into the budget.
Okay. And if you could just explain where we get, like you said, you had 400,000 for the waiver, and you're basing it on the increase. And you said if we qualify, what determines that to give us that 400,000? Is there anything in our own numbers? Like, I guess our healthcare, we over budgeted like over $1 million last year. So what happens to that million that we over budgeted?
So that's in the current year, so that's savings in the current year. The way the health benefits waiver is calculated is what you budgeted last year compared to what you're budgeting next year. So I'm budgeting a 14% increase on the medical benefits, but because we didn't have an increase this year, we actually had a reduction, it nets down, and because we had a reduction in our prescription, so it nets down. I don't have that exactly in front of me, but it nets out to about 6%. So it's not, even though I'm budgeting a 14% for medical and a 5% for prescription, it doesn't work out to that larger number because we have the savings in the current year. So any money that we don't use in the current year could be put back towards the capital reserve, maintenance reserve, emergency reserve. It could also be part of fund balance. And that's it, because it's only one-time money, it's only a one-time savings, because our benefits go up the next year and then the next year after that.
So when you do that calculation, when you say you look at the budgeted number, do you look at the original budget or the
Yes.
adjusted budget?
The
You look at
original
budget number.
Yes.
So when we come up with a real budget number, because I know you're just estimating the cap that the insurance company, the max, when that, if that number, which I'm hoping is not going to come in at 14%, that would lower that $400,000 number, is what you're saying.
Right, so even if they came in at 10%, that would bring that number down, but it wouldn't let us increase anything else in the budget, because it can only be used for health benefits.
Any other questions in the budget? Any other new business? The one item yesterday.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will be quick.
Yeah, well, I'll be brief, I promise, because we have to discuss this as a board in more detail. But last night, Mr. Syatt, Mr. Walsh, and myself met with members of the council. They have a liaison to the board, and we have John's our liaison to the council. And we discussed a few things regarding shared services and how we, how we can help each other out and save some money. So here's what they were, okay? We are putting in a new football field this year. For those of you who are going to go crazy and say, why aren't we putting money towards security in a football field? The football field is 13 years old. It has a shelf life of 10 years. There's sinkholes and there's real insurance risks. And we really want to keep our kids safe out there. So the town, the borough, is putting in 2 fields. So our thought was perhaps we can talk to the person putting in their fields to see if he puts in a 3rd field in town, if we can have some cost savings there. So we're going to explore that.
So let's just take these one at a time. So the direction on that one would be, the town will be going out to bid for the improvements or the laying of the football field for the town. We would like the board's permission to have Ms. Hill contact Mr. Frankel and see if there's a way that we can pool that bid and do both in one shot, if that's feasible.
Can I just tell, I'm not going out to bid for that project, I wasn't planning to. There's a purchasing consortium that we can use to do that. So all I was looking for at this point was an engineer to review everything so that we can make a decision on which company we wanted to go with. So I don't know, I'd have to talk to Mr. Frankel to see if our process would work with his.
And that's basically all we're looking to do at this point. We haven't committed to anything, we're just looking to get the dialogue going between the professionals to see if there's a synergy that exists there. If it doesn't work, or doesn't work on our timeline or their timeline, obviously it doesn't work. Is anyone on the board opposed to that? Okay, you have your direction on that one? Number 2?
Number 2. The borough was putting in, for lack of a better term, what was the acronym they used? I know it's a DPW garage for their trucks and their mechanics. Theirs is falling apart and they're in need of one. I think their cost is around $16 million. And we need a space for our buses. We park some at Slover, we park some at the high school. So this is probably a long shot. However, we would like to open discussion with them to see if there's a possibility that we could share some of the cost but use the facilities. So again, we don't know if we have the revenue to even enter into this agreement, but we'd like to know if the board would allow Aaron or whomever to have open dialogue to see how much it would cost us and what we would actually receive, what benefits we would receive from this. So.
Comments or discussion? Anyone opposed to just exploring it?
We talked about this 5 years ago.
It keeps coming back, yes.
15 years ago.
Yes, like I said, I'm not optimistic on this one. I'm more optimistic about the field that there might be an opportunity. But again, I don't think it hurts to
We're trying.
explore it if
Yeah.
there's an opportunity. Anyone opposed? Okay, so while you have Mr. Frankel on the phone, contact him about the CSA, or what?
CFS, I think.
The CFS.
CFS.
I can't remember what that stands for, but it's the new work garage for the mechanics and for vehicles.
So, the other security was the third one, if I remember correctly, okay? So, we're just exploring a little bit to see if there's ways that we can share some of the police departments, some services that they have right now. I know right now that we all know that we have resource officers that we pay for, and we're trying to, and patrolmen that go into our schools once a day. We've discussed that previous, and we're looking for different areas. Yeah.
You get a little TD on security there.
What?
That was in actually Dr. Labby's talk soon.
Okay.
About police officers
Yeah.
periodically checking.
Yeah. On patrol, they enter our schools and they patrol daily. So there's cameras, we need cameras for certain schools. And the town has people that they use, and they're putting in a new camera system in their borough, and they want to know if we would enter into discussions with them to see if it was possible that we could partner up, and again, once again, see if we can lower the cost as far as putting our cameras in our schools, and those cameras would be directly, I believe, the police department has the capability of looking into our schools and making sure, that everything is copacetic. And so we want to know if you guys are interested, again, in just opening up discussions to talk about the possibility of sharing some security resources.
Do we have any cameras in this budget?
I mean, there might be some
I
replacements,
think
but
we have replacements.
we're not allocating any schools. So that would be more of a long term.
If we need cameras, why are there none in the budget? If we need more cameras?
You want the short answer besides money? It really is a financial issue, that's it.
Well,
We're saying we need them, we want them, okay? I think they're a necessity, and I think everyone.
yeah, because I thought we had gone through this with cameras. I thought we were okay with our cameras. I didn't think that we had a shortage.
We're okay with the cameras in the buildings that have them, right, but not all of our schools are equipped with cameras.
Exactly.
Well, I guess my concern is if we need cameras and it's a security thing, I think it should be top of the priority list for the budget. And I don't want to wait for years to go to see what the borough's going to do. I think I didn't realize we didn't have any in there if we needed them. I'd like to see that be put on a higher priority. I was under the impression that we were well equipped with cameras and we pretty much were in a replacement mode. But you're telling me, no, we need more. Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm telling you.
So where are we at a loss for cameras?
Oh, hang on, let's just be clear.
But
Let's just be clear. And the buildings that have cameras do not have any deficits other than some replacements which we budgeted for.
that's correct.
Is that a fair statement?
I would say from a security perspective and a technology perspective, the more places we can have camera coverage, the better. So while some of our buildings have more camera coverage than others because they've had them for longer, and they're probably in a better position for coverage, those cameras do age out, and there are certainly places that we could increase coverage in those buildings as well. All of our buildings do currently have security cameras. To what extent is the variable?
So were any cameras cut from the budget? Or no one put any in?
I know that, and Aaron, I don't know the specifics of the line items, but we were looking to centralize all security funding to district level instead of having to be broken down to the schools.
And
We only budgeted for the replacements, but if I can just add something on the funding for that very quickly. One thing that I mentioned is the health benefits, that we had that savings this year. We can put money into an emergency reserve in the current year that could then be used for cameras. So it can be withdrawn. That's a new rule this past year. We can remove money from an emergency reserve for security items. And it's not a very lengthy process to do that either. So that's something that, if we have the funding available this year, or maybe we don't see it until the audit happens, then we move it into an emergency reserve.
just so we don't get ahead of our skis here a little bit, these were very, very, very preliminary discussions that basically focused on, not necessarily what our need was, but if something came up that they were doing or that we were doing that could possibly result in savings, maybe something that isn't the highest priority of the thing, but that could eventually, now or later, result in savings, why not at least explore it? I mean, and it wasn't one-sided. I also brought up the fact that we're looking maybe one day to have an 18 to 21 program, and we would like some space in town if anything ever came up. Do I think that they're gonna give us an apartment or something right off the bat? No, but it's out there now. You know, maybe something does come up and they have some extra space. So, I mean, these are very just discussions at this
Right, well,
point.
exploring something future is fine, it just brought up a point that I was concerned that we don't have, if we have such a.
Well, I didn't want you to get, I think you got the impression that we were asking for something that we needed but didn't budget for. That is not the case.
No.
It's something that they were getting, that they brought up, they have some ins in, and we just said, of course we discussed it, we didn't even know the need or lack of or a need for, but everything was kind of on the table in this discussion, and I think that's how we wanted to leave it, because why miss any opportunities, everything was kind of on the table, but nothing was promised on either side.
Well, that's fine for the future, but I'm concerned about now.
What I'm telling you, it wasn't put in as a need.
Well, and can I make a point too? I mean, with regard to the cameras, one of the things that we are doing that is of a security nature is trying to get our cameras to feed in, to law enforcement. Heaven forbid if something was going on, they could get a live view of what it is that's taking place and where. But for the most part, when you talk about our security cameras, the most important security cameras are the ones on our doors. The ones in which the people inside of our buildings are looking at whoever's approaching our doors. The other security cameras, while they are nice, you need somebody to monitor those. I mean, we don't have the personnel to monitor 10 different camera angles within a building. For the most part, our cameras are used to pick up footage that we go back to look at what might have happened. When we're investigating something, we use our camera footage to see what happened. So they're more of an investigative tool than they are a security tool. The security cameras are the ones that are on our doors so that we can see exactly who it is that's approaching our doors. Now, yes, would we like to be in a position in which we have cameras in our building that, heaven forbid, something that it was going on, the police could access the camera and see where people are for intelligence purposes? Yeah. And are we close to being there for some of our buildings? Yes. But, again, you guys know about how difficult it is with the budget that we're working with and some of the constraints that we have within it. So, yeah, we would love to be able to purchase more cameras from more angles within our buildings. But we, at this point, are only able to afford the replacement of the existing cameras that we have.
And listen, it's getting late, but just to kind of lay this out there for people to think about, chew on, we talked about in our strategic plan, the possibility of a referendum for building envelope, windows, roofs, things that preserve the building envelope, HVAC. Maybe we look at that also in the context of what are the physical security barriers that we also need to include and package that up as one package.
Yeah, I mean,
cameras, there's other, and again, I don't want to talk about it in public, but there's other improvements that really can be made with some infrastructure dollars.
And that should be of a more proactive preventative nature.
Exactly.
Which is what I do not consider interior cameras to be.
But we're okay with the exterior now.
Yes.
We're fine.
All right, so finally, and let me just, before the last topic we spoke about, we're meeting in the next week or two to do a little more follow-up on these and look a little more closely at each item, okay? Lastly, the borough seems to be having a slight issue with attendance, keeping track of it. It's a lot of paperwork, it's very cumbersome, so we use ASOP, I believe, and is that what it is, ASOP, right? And they asked, right, and they asked if there was a possibility that they could piggyback onto our system at some point. Perhaps the more users we have drives our costs down a little bit. So, we were going to bring that up to you guys also and see if that was a possibility.
I've spoken to Mr. Frankel's website in the past, actually, because ASAP is designed specifically for schools.
So
it's not really, it's not necessarily just a system of full person vacation days and things like that, it's getting substitutes. So I gave him all the information, I don't know if he ever reached out to the person at ASOP, but they very specifically told me that they don't work with anything other than education institutions.
Okay. All right, I don't know if that, obviously they weren't speaking to each other, because one of the councilwomen that we were with suggested that we speak to Dan Franco and see if we can move this forward. So what you're saying is they won't touch it, or it's just not conducive for non-schools?
Central is a program that's really, it's for education.
Right. But you can use it as an attendance tool, and so you don't utilize it to its full extent. Could you use it for an attendance tool if they want?
You could, but the cost would probably be prohibitive for that.
Okay.
Because part of the cost is because you have that cell phone.
The bells and whistles.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And I believe that's all we discussed.
It was only an hour, yeah. All right, it is now 10:30. Is there any other business that cannot wait until March 6th? Hearing none, I'll open it up to public for any item concerning the school district. Hearing none, I'll close public and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Bashad, second by Mr. Walsh. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.